special guest who's been in the business of software and now in the business of hardware for PC. And his name is Shawn, and hopefully I say your last name right, Borsky from Nzxt. What's going on, Shawn?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, you got the name right. Good job. So, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it. And we always find these interviews interesting because there's so much in the industry and so many different things to the industry on the inside, the outside, what makes it work, how many people it takes on a team. And it's something that always intrigues us, because we stare at game screens or we stare at hardware as we put it in our PCs and we have no clue what really goes on to make all this kind of magic happen. So it's always exciting getting to learn a little bit. And with me on the panel today, I do have Midway Monster, I have Mav, and Dreadpool with us as well. So I'm going to go ahead. If anybody in the chat has questions, feel free to roll them, and we'll ask them as they come up. And Shawn, just to get to know you a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in gaming, and the kind of work that you used to do and the kind that you're currently working on?
Sure. I'll try to not spend too much time on it. It's a multi-part story, but generally speaking, I pretty much wanted to work in video games, since I was a little kid. I was one of those kids that like, oh yeah, I'm going to work in video games. Everyone's like, yeah, sure, everyone's going to work in video games. That was right after the point where I wanted to be a professional baseball player, but this one actually panned out. So the kind of the early section of my career was actually before college. I actually kind of got my start. I started working for a site at the time, which was called SOCOM Battles. I don't know if anyone's familiar with SOCOM U.S. Navy SEALs, but I was into playing that game. This is PlayStation 1. Might have been PlayStation 2. No, the first one was PlayStation 1. And I was just kind of into what was becoming competitive gaming at the time. So I became what was called a referee, which I was helping like kind of the online honor system. So the kind of the start fast forwarding into that, I always kind of wanted to work in video games, but that site actually turned into what became Game Battles, if anyone's familiar with that site.
Yes.
And I got my start in Paint Shop Pro back at the time. Doing signatures on the forums was a big deal. So I kind of started learning a lot of actual graphic design and using Paint Shop Pro and Photoshop doing signature requests. And I eventually volunteered on Game Battles and got to know the founder Chip really well. And I eventually became effectively the creative director designer. So I was doing the site skins and the design work for Game Battles. And about that time, this is like 2007-ish, Major League Gaming acquired Game Battles, and I got to meet a bunch of the guys at Major League Gaming. There's actually a weird circle back for this, but at the time, I started, working with them, and I did the older version, not the current one, but the Major League Gaming logo. I redesigned MMO Champions logo. I redesigned Game Battles to look more like Major League Gaming, and that was kind of like my first real big kind of entry into doing websites and design. And I got an opportunity for Game Battles to go work at the studio in Seattle called WXP Studios. They were working on Greg Hastings Tournament Paintball for the PlayStation
Ooh.
2.
Nice.
So just to fast forward the story like a bit, basically we were just there to kind of QA test and put like a Game Battles thing, but I have kind of like a big mouth. So we were in like a marketing meeting and they were showing us stuff and they were like, oh, here's the cover. Isn't it exciting? And I was like, I can do a better job than that. So one thing led to another. I like Photoshop designed the Greg Hastings cover like on my laptop. And the day before I was going to go back from Seattle, because I was only there for like a week, they were like, oh, we want to use that. Do you want to stay here and like keep working on that? So this started a sojourn of me like living on couches. And for a while I was actually living in WXC's game studio as like, getting like a small amount of money. So I ended up working a lot on like the print manual and the cover, and I did a little bit of QA work on Greg Hastings and I knew Greg Hastings himself pretty well. That was one of the people that kind of brought me out there. And then I started working with a bunch of his business partners on Greenwave games, and I worked with like Sig Hansen on what became like the Deadliest Catch game for 360. We worked on a couple of other game concepts, and then I got into doing the mobile version of Greg Hastings with a company that was called MachineWorks Northwest. So we did Greg Hastings for mobile, and then we eventually did a couple other games. So this kind of got me into Activision at the time, Activision Value, and I started doing print label work and other types of things for World Series Poker, Cabela's Hunting, as well as doing mobile work with this company, Machine Works, and working with Greenwave. So I'm like 17 at this time. I can't even drink. And I'm doing all this stuff. So anyway, I was about the time I was going to go to college. So they offered me a job there, but I decided actually to go back to college, which was the SCAD, Savannah College of Art and Design. And I ended up going there, getting my degree and everything. But during that time, I just started doing freelance work, and more people were like, "Hey, can you do this work?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, totally. How do you do this?" And I started pulling in friends of mine that were at SCAD that were also in the game development and interactive design degree program. And we started working with MachineWorks on with 3D Realms to do Duke Nukem and Prey for mobile. We eventually did like 3D models and textures. We were like working in the SCAD like game development building at night. And I was also starting to work like doing the Major League Gaming redesign and started taking on website clients. So by the time I graduated, I kind of went over to work for BMW briefly on the 7 Series as part of my college program. And they also offered me a job in Munich, but I decided, no, my life's about games. So I went back and I actually moved back to where I'm from, Atlanta, and I started a game studio / website design firm called Anthem Design Group. And one of my great friends from a school that I actually do a podcast with, his name Richmond, we started Anthem in Atlanta, and we just started doing basically anything that would come in the door, like websites, applications, video games. We worked on Guitar Hero for mobile. We did tons of 3D Realms titles. We worked on a bunch of things for High Heat, so MLB branded stuff. We did a couple of DS games. We were basically starting to do 3D modeling and porting. We basically ported Field Runner from iPhone to basically like what I call hardcore mobile, like not before iPhone when you had to do like basically like Qualcomm and Brew and J2ME, just really hardcore coding platforms and stuff. And then we started doing iPhone. And to jump forward a bit, basically I had that company. We had about 15 employees. We did like Royal Caribbean and a couple of pharmaceutical companies, doing pretty well, but I started kind of losing employees to people in San Francisco. And I started kind of getting into the reality of running a business, like taxes, bill collection, stuff that as a designer, you don't really want to do. And I also started finding out that in the game industry, when you're a porter and you're doing a lot of like back end work for companies like Hands-On and Activision, that they kind of use you as a bank a little bit. Like you go for like 90, 120 days where you're owed like $100,000. And for like an 18-year-old kid that has an office in Atlanta, that's really tough. So I was pretty proud of what I did. A lot of the people ended up moving to the West Coast. So I sold the company in about 2010, moved to San Francisco, and I started working in a company called Rivet Games. We were making Facebook games. So we had a bunch of people there from Insomniac and High Moon Studios, and we were making Pet Tales, which is a pet park game that was on Facebook, which actually did pretty okay. We were really close to getting acquired by Amazon Game Studios back when they were first starting to do that. We had an excellent CEO, Jesse Janisoff from Xbox, that was the CEO, who definitely a great guy, really good in the gaming industry. But they eventually shuttered, did the classic startup like, I guess we're not going to do this. We worked on a few couple other Facebook games, like a weird Western one, and we had a petting game on iPhone. But then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna chill from games for a bit. So I started just doing tons of freelance work in the Bay Area, and I ended up kind of stumbling into working with First Round Capital, and eventually I joined Hotel Tonight. The CEO kind of talked me into this vision they had for hotel booking, which seemed like a really weird departure for me. I also worked at like a company, Legal Reach, for a bit, which was a social network for attorneys, which is a terrible idea, and we found that out. But the two guys that I worked with, one of them went off and started Instacart, and the other one went off and started Fast Fight, and I went to Hotel Tonight. So I think we all did better than the legal social network. So I was the lead designer at Hotel Tonight for a while, and then after a few years, I wanted to kind of get back into gaming and mobile, but I didn't want to get back into the grind of making video games. So I jumped to this company called, at the time it was called Contagion Playhaven. And they eventually branded to Upside. They're kind of a mobile analytics game firm that worked with a ton of mobile games and stuff. And I was the creative director there for a few years. And then I found out that Blizzard had opened an office in San Francisco. And I was like, oh, well, Blizzard, I've always wanted to work there. I mean, I've worked on a ton of games. I worked for Activision. You know, at that time I'd done about 15 different games or something. But I was like, you know what? I kind of want to back in the industry, but I don't want to work on the games. I want to work on like other stuff. And they were hiring a mobile team out there. So I just joined Blizzard as the design lead for mobile. And that was where I worked on like the BlizzCon app, eventually developed the Battle.net mobile app, the Overwatch League mobile app. My team maintains really the World of Warcraft Armory for a while, which got its own story entirely. And then eventually they closed the San Francisco office after about a year. So me and my colleagues actually ended up moving down to Orange County to join Blizzard. We worked on a number of things, kind of grew the team, grew them out in our Austin office as well. And I eventually was promoted to group design manager, and I was managing a lot of the content management systems, websites, mobile apps for web and mobile organization within Blizzard. And then we had a couple of different kind of reorgs over the years. So I was there for about 5 years, did basically all the mobile apps that you've seen from Blizzard. I worked on or led the design in some way. I helped develop out like the push notification system that Hearthstone uses. And then eventually Battle.net and web and mobile organizations inside of Blizzard merged into Battle.net and online products. And I took a detour and kind of became a product manager, and I managed the data teams at Blizzard, doing all of the pipeline work, back end, and then having all this background in mobile, I was actually heading up the what was called the Mobile Readiness Initiative. So a lot of things I can't tell you about, but I worked very closely with people from representing the Battle.net side on Diablo Immortal. Obviously worked on Hearthstone, a couple of the secret titles that may or may not be happening. I worked on a number of those that I can't tell you about because they're not out yet. And then I kind of I was a group manager within the Battle.net platform group. So I was, for the most part, also working on the movement to Google Cloud Platform and all sorts of technology. And anyway, ultimately, I kind of came to the point where I love Blizzard and I was really excited about what we were working on. But I got into this interest to make video games and to do design work. I'm a interface designer at heart and by skill. And I had a number of friends that had left to go to Nzxt, which I was aware of. We actually had done a number of PCs for BlizzCon with Nzxt, and I wasn't really planning to leave. I actually was just going to take a break to write and do my podcast and stuff. And a lot of my friends at Nzxt kind of convinced me that they had like a really cool vision, and I was really excited about getting into something that was peripheral to gaming, but because I really love being in the industry, but I just didn't want to work on games. And Blizzard almost tricked me into getting back into game development because I was doing all the tech integration work. I was on the phone with our developers for Diablo Immortal. I was doing a bunch of work for like Overwatch and Diablo 4. I kind of got tricked back into that life to some degree. So I eventually, like in May, decided to leave for a bit just because I was getting kind of burned out and we were working so hard. And I was going to write, and then my friends in Nzxt were like, well, you got to talk to Johnny, the CEO. Just talk to him. Just talk about these things. And anyway, I was eventually convinced to join to lead the design teams there. So that's the long/short version of roughly my experience in the industry.
First of all, I just want to say that is really an awesome story, because it shows that you have a lot of passion for what you do. When you take a job knowing that you're going to be, sleeping on couches just because it's the work that you love and you still do it anyway, that is pure passion right there. So that amazes me. Unbelievable. I knew somebody as well who was with, I guess, Activision when they first took over Call of Duty. I also met Chance Glasgow. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he told me the story of how he was living out of his car just to make video games until Activision came out and bought, Infinity Ward. He was one of the original 11 people at Infinity Ward. So that reminds me of like that pure passion that, man, you just love something, so you go for it and you want to do it and you want to learn it more. That's amazing, man.
That's true. I often tell people that the game industry is an industry of heroes. Like, obviously there's all sorts of things you talk about with timelines and quality in people, but like anybody you meet that are on dev teams or working on games, like they really give a shit. Like they're putting their all into this stuff. Like to so whenever I see people kind of criticizing it, I'm always like, hey, criticize the publisher for this or criticize the development leadership, but like never question that the people that work on these games like love it to their core. Like, yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of variation in everything you've done in gaming. So it's nice to see that you've it's not just one thing. That you have a vast knowledge of a little bit of everything there. So not just a passion.
I think it's an example of a fan kind of working their way into the industry, right? You kind of weaseled your way in there through a website, just doing stuff that a lot of people do even today, just for free. Messing with websites, doing forum support, I guess you could say, like trying to help out, and then eventually one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. You do it for so long, and that's an awesome story to have a true fan that's worked their way to now being such a big part of a big company.
Well, I tell people a lot that the value that I got, even though I have a degree in game development and interactive design, most of what I feel like I got from school are the friends that I made and the connections that I made. Like ultimately, I feel like if you have the passion, you should get into it for sure. Like most of the people in the industry, especially like you can enter from community management. Even at Blizzard, a ton of my really talented colleagues came up through the customer service organization and through temporary assignments or internships managed to get in, and they learned on the job. So yeah, I would definitely agree. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you need some sort of training to get into the industry.
Did you pay for college by doing those just odd jobs here and there, pretty much?
So yes and no. So when I entered college, my parents and I was in Georgia. The Hope Scholarship did fund the first year, but by a second year, all those odd jobs and things, I did take it over from my parents, and then by the time I left college, I had already paid off my loans.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I worked a lot. I'm a total workaholic. That's why I drink coffee all the time. So. I'm a little better at it now, but I used to work pretty much constantly, and I loved it.
That's kind of like when you first started. It's kind of the fake it till you make it. You just got to do what you got to do, and it's cool to see that you've actually you're learning from other people to prove that you know what you're doing and producing, not just, oh well, I don't know this, and then walking away. Just do what you got to do.
I would say that actually inadvertently led to me kind of cultivating a very valuable skill set that I didn't plan at all. Like tons of people helped me and were trained me and mentored me and trusted me and stuff. But yeah, you're right. Like most of my career has just been like, oh yeah, I can totally do that, and being like, crap, how do I do that? And just kind of doing the best that I could and learning and stuff like that. But yeah, you're totally right. It's just a matter of, I'm not afraid of doing that all, or if someone doesn't tell me what to do, I'll just fill in the blanks. I coach a lot of designers that like you should never look for the limitations. You should always look for the vision, and then you'll kind of back your vision into reality and work through it. And like sometimes that means like, oh hey, they didn't provide the logo in vector format. You could decide that you're stuck, or you could just throw their a crappy JPEG into Illustrator and trace it and then move forward, or just redesign it entirely. Oh, I didn't get the copy for this. Just make up some cool copy. That kind of thing. Like just always having that move forward spirit, I think it inadvertently develops a very wide, valuable skill set. But like I said, I don't want to take credit like I planned it. I just happened to always just do stuff that was in front of me.
Yeah, ingenuity makes all the difference. When you, like you said, when you're put behind the gun like that and don't have the assets you need, it's pretty cool to see that that others are also still doing that and pushing the boundaries.
The one thing I wanted to say was that it was very interesting that you mentioned the SOCOM forums that turned into game battles, because I remember the early days of game battles, and I remember how tight of a community it was, because it was a really tight community at one point of people, and we actually had a group on Xbox for what was it, Rainbow Six Siege Black Arrow. and we actually did game battles with that game, and we did team compete at the time. And I remember, like,
Mhm.
during the game battle days, like, there were so many questionable things that happened back then because, you know, it's not like today where you can see stuff on stream constantly, you can view who's doing what, and sometimes
Yeah.
people will be like, "Oh, well, that person glitched the wall," or "That person
Yeah.
cheated," and then you'd have to record your matches and then submit them to referees and have the referee review it to see, you know, well, was this really somebody who was cheating, or was this just, like, an accidental glitch, or was this just, like, an on-called for kind of, you know what I mean? Like it was a whole different kind of day back then, and I kind of miss those days in a sense because I just felt it
It,
was more pure.
it was being a referee and an admin in that thing is, yeah, you're right. It was like a special kind of fun experience. But yeah, you're definitely in this place where you'd have to go in on Xbox or on PlayStation and get in there with your microphone and be like, "Hello, I'm a Game Battles referee," and they're like, they were cheating," and you're like, "Okay, whoa, here." I actually more than like basically, I don't know if this was the same in Rainbow Six because I didn't ref in Rainbow Six, but I remember most of the time the answer was just to make them play the game again, and you had to spectate.
Yeah.
And I actually remember, believe it or not, there were some people that were brazen enough to glitch in front of a referee. Like I actually had it happen a few times where I was like, "This guy is wall glitching. He knows I'm spectating." Like, so I mean, but yeah, that was definitely a different time of competitive gaming for sure.
Oh yeah. Um, I don't know if you remember. I mean, you might probably not remember our group name because there was like, quite a few groups back then on there, but we were Abandon All Hope. That was our group for Rainbow Six Siege.
It sounds kind of familiar, but to be honest with you, like I think by the time that Siege was on there, I was doing more like design and training referees and staff. Like in terms of actual referee work and admin work, I mostly managed like the SOCOM ladders because that's what I knew, and then a couple
So
other ones. But
when you were sitting at home on the computer or whatever, were you wearing a striped shirt?
no, I was actually just drinking a lot of like brisk iced tea.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
Which I
Brisk.
learned later have a tremendous amount of calories in them.
yes.
So, so my parents were like, "You shouldn't do this. You should go out and get like a job and like whatever." And I was like, so of course now they're like, "Oh, you knew what you were doing. You knew this was going to be a job." I was like, "Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I knew that." Definitely wasn't just buying Mountain Dew and brisk iced tea and playing video games in my room all day. Totally planning to have a job.
So we have a technical question, clowns, that just came in from the chat. So I don't know if you want to read that.
Yeah, I do. It's I think it's kind of like a funny question.
Yeah, it
But
is.
in Infinite, one of the viewers in the chat asked, "Should we build a PC around the case or a case around the PC?" Is there any right
I
or
mean,
wrong answer to it?
give you like a serious version of that question, which is like, depends what you want out of your PC. Like I would say if you want like it sitting on your desk and being all beautiful, I mean, obviously start with your case because like that's going to be the way that it looks. But if you want to build like an absolute powerhouse, get your components first and then figure out a case that'll fit in it. Or I don't know. I think a lot of people start with their GPU or what they want to do with it. Like, do you want to do gaming? Do you want to do whatever? But I mean, personally, I like to start with like the case to some degree, but that's because like mine's on my desk and really it sparks joy to look at it. But like, yeah, if you just want like a beefy powerhouse that's going to sit under your desk, then like start with your components. But I don't know if there's a joke version of the answer, but that's my semi-serious answer.
So does it matter if I start with my 90s tower?
I definitely don't think so. I mean, I was also like the test rigs. Like theoretically, you don't need a case. I mean,
Yeah.
you get all the components, you mount them correctly. They could just sit in a box if you want. The people that have like built those desks that have a PC inside of them. Like in reality, it's like the philosophical question: like, what is a case? It's like, does it contain your hopes and dreams, or does it just contain your components? Who knows?
I'm a stickler for vintage. Give me that old IBM aluminum case.
Oh,
No
No.
way. No, Midway.
With the red switch on the side, like to power it up.
Oh, you got to
Oh.
take that old
rips nice, yeah.
E-Machines case that's sitting in my garage and take all the components out of it. And
I'm here for the compact Presario. The entire
compact
case is mostly
Presario,
a
nice.
facade shell for some reason. Yeah.
Awesome.
What about Nooks? What do you think of those?
Nooks like the tablet.
The mini PCs.
I don't know. I don't know if I have a very strong opinion about them. To be honest with you, like when I kind of look at a PC, it kind of comes down to like again, it's like what you want out of it. When I think about like things like that, like the smaller PCs, I'm like, well, it's to me like what kind of hack project are you trying to do? Like when I hear like that, like a Nook or a Pi, it's like, oh, are you trying to, you trying to build some weird like system or hack project that you want going, or do you want to create something that needs to have the computer mounted on the wall or something like that? But I always go Raspberry Pi when I'm trying to do a project like that. I haven't really messed around with the mini PCs. Although at Blizzard, we had a bunch of ones where it was like, oh, we need a server. Someone's like, let's just put a Mac Mini under someone's desk, and that'll support like 40 million players. What could go wrong?
Okay.
That's the first time I've ever heard that story. That's pretty cool, actually. Just to know that people, in the industry do like little hack projects like that. That's kind of fun.
I probably shouldn't tell you all this, but the push notification service that runs all of Blizzard's hundreds of millions of push notifications, there was at least 2 years where it was all being served off of a Mac Mini that was sitting under someone's desk in Austin.
Oh, I believe it.
I could see that. I mean, I could see it being practical even for that, for what it was. That makes sense. But I'm glad it wasn't a gaming server.
Just to make you cringe, I had Rectifex set parts in my PC when I was growing up. Like screwed it to like keep things together.
Gorn DT says, "Is this live? Hi, Sean. I don't know if you know him. I guess he's watching on Periscope on Twitter."
Oh, Jeff, yeah. Hey, Jeff.
I was gonna say, back in the day, the most interesting, unique hack project that I've seen was when I was on the America Online forums. A bunch of Slackware guys, if you remember Slackware, they made servers out of pizza boxes, and like they were like bragging about how their pizza boxes stayed cool and they could run servers off them. And I was like, trust something like that. That was before I really knew how to build the PC. I mean, I would take mine apart all the time because we had like gateway PCs, and I would just take them apart and swap parts. But I never thought about like a pizza box until I saw that forum post.
I feel like it probably is very breathable material, I would guess. Yeah.
I think back then too, like the chips that they used to use for Linux weren't as resources intensive. And they probably didn't have really good graphics cards. They probably just ran like BBS style forms or something of them.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, hey, I got a question. So, after all of your journey, and I know you kind of started doing a little bit of work for them, but other than that, what made your decision to choose Nzxt actually as the company to kind of stick with? I see they have a lot of good branding, and I see a lot of high profile content creators actually using these PCs. Is that something that drew you to them, or is it more about the quality? Or
not really. I actually didn't know like many of the influencers or like streamers that used it. For me, it's so I'd say first of all, I saw a company that had a lot of similar aspects to what I liked about Blizzard. Very, very customer focused, very design driven. That sounds like very kind of cheesy to say, but there's just not a lot of companies in the world that are actually design driven. Like they really prioritize it. Something I liked about Hotel Tonight when I worked there. Something I like about Blizzard, like that. So that element alone makes it interesting. I will say, like, definitely originally I was like, oh, I'm not that interested in just like doing hardware stuff. But I think the fact that like Nzxt is so interested in being an inclusive gaming company, like to give you an idea, like for me, the real sweet spot for things that I love are what I would call lifestyle brands. I feel like Hotel Tonight was one like that. Blizzard is like that, where they have like obviously products they offer. I think that you can consider Nike a lifestyle brand. Like to me, just like like inject that shit into my veins, kind of like just the entire thing they do isn't just about what they make. It's like the community and the values they kind of push forward. They create this halo around them. Like, so you can kind of look at companies like Blizzard, and they've made a few missteps recently, but overall there are friendships formed, and just like there's so much great like lore and fun to be had around those games. So for me, when I look at a company like Nzxt, I see kind of an opportunity to be part of that community, and really, in a lot of ways, like we kind of talked about how like I'm a total workaholic. There's a part of me that was like, man, I'm only working on like 3 games. I could be working on every game out there, like in theory, right? Like, so we get to be engaged with the rest of the community. And the fact that Nzxt is so design led, to me, that's just, there's a lot of kind of engagement in creating a cohesive experience across everything we're doing. Like, it's very exciting to be like, how do we tie hardware and software, CS, like what is happening on social media? Like, how do we bring all these things together? And even places like Blizzard had like a lot of blockages to, you knew an amazing kind of experience you could offer customers, but Blizzard's kind of a place where you have to align everybody and get a ton of consensus, and everyone's got it in their heart the right way. Like, everyone's doing it for the players, but ultimately everyone's got slightly different directions. So getting anything done is very, very slow. So looking at a place like Nzxt is, so having the drive to do cool things like that, having the leadership to want to do it, having the desire to become bigger than what you're doing, trying to bring all of that together in service of like the gaming community. Like I said, inject that shit into my veins. Like that's why I got into this industry. I didn't get into it to make things or to design. Like I enjoy people enjoying those things. Like part of like the way that you get the energy from working at Blizzard is going to things like BlizzCon and just like absorbing everyone's enjoyment of what you contribute to. So to me, Nzxt offers that in a variety of ways across the industry. And I happen to really resonate, honestly, with Nzxt has kind of an underlying approach around a kind of a bit more mature, less stereotypical approach to gaming, which is why a lot of our products are very clean, very mature looking. Not that there's anything wrong with like your black and green spaceship looking, awesome looking rigs and stuff, but I really resonated with like getting older and getting into this more mature area of gaming, and the idea that creates inclusion where you can be proud of being whatever gamer you are, and you don't get kind of saddled with that old niche idea of being a gamer that's been around for a while. So to me, the mission of creating this inclusive, like, we're not trying to be PC master race about it. We're not trying to be limiting. We want more PC gamers. We want more people coming in. We want to include everybody. We want it to be this fantastic, huge community. The fact that we're able to drive that through all sorts of things, like, to me, I want to be at the center of all that, and not have to actually work on the games myself so I can enjoy them too.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Pope's in the chat and he says Shawn is a great guy, and Infinite wants to let you know that he thinks you're pretty cool.
Cool. Thank you. I think y'all are cool too.
So you mentioned Blizzard missteps. Now, when you say that, for us as gamers, we kind of look at Blizzard's missteps, where basically Activision. So how much involvement does Activision and Blizzard have? Because I know there was a lot of turmoil back and forth between the two with the people being in charge. And, we're just gamers. We don't know the inside stuff. So we don't know part of the inner politics. How much of that is that we don't know, or are we on with Activision being,
I just like with like half the things we're talking about, the answer is, of course, always more complicated than you might expect. So what I will say is that I do think that overall the perception that Activision is doing stuff to Blizzard is on its face kind of incorrect. Blizzard as a company within Activision Blizzard is, generally speaking, Activision and Blizzard are treated separately, and Activision Blizzard, the overall publishing arm, is like a holding company of it. So they for the most part, Activision and Blizzard still operate fairly autonomously. They have been combining shared functions like HR and like finance and that kind of thing. And it's definitely correct that there is a little bit of a push to be more shareholder focus. But I would say like down on the ground level of the development area, a lot of the decisions that Blizzard has made are 100% their own fault. Like, it's not because of Activision. It was because either the leaders made assumptions or they didn't prioritize stuff. But the development teams, generally speaking, I feel like are still fairly, they have a lot of what makes the secret sauce taste good, if you will. And everybody that I worked with at Blizzard is amazing, and they are bleeding Blizzard Blue passion into the games they're working on. I like personally, I think the way to kind of look at it is that Activision isn't gonna break, like they're basically like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is kind of the thing. And I think that where you're seeing Activision's influence more is a bit more in the approach to things like esports. And a lot of the things that I've seen in terms of working with, like all the Call of Duty studios are awesome as well. You really see it mostly in the way that they think about money, if that makes sense. So it's definitely true that Activision, as a parent company, is a little bit less interested in risky endeavors, which is why they're investing so heavily in things they know people will love, like Diablo and Overwatch. And most of the new stuff they were working on, not that they aren't working on cool new stuff that's completely brand new, but a lot of the really in development stuff is based on current franchises. Like they're sticking to trying very hard to give customers what they feel like they're telling them. So I don't know if that's kind of a long answer to your question, but I do know that what's really kind of strange is that because Blizzard is actually by people much larger than Activision, there was always the reverse perception from Activision employees that Blizzard was going to eat Activision actually, because you're talking about a much larger centralized teams. Activision is really kind of much more spread out, but I often kind of tell people, like, ultimately your mileage may vary because Blizzard isn't really a big company. They're a loose confederation of game studios. And in a lot of ways, they're trying very hard to know what it's like to act like a big company and still kind of maintain their soul. And it's tough. So that's why I call them missteps, is I really think that, like, behind all of the effort and stuff that happens, like, they're not trying to do these things, like they're mistakes. And some of them ultimately are just kind of teaching them that Blizzard has these values they've kind of put out there, and the people on the ground absolutely weaponize and live by the values and talk about them. And most of the stuff you see tends to happen from the leadership level, and their heart's kind of in the right place. Like, you can kind of talk through the logic of it. But like ultimately they didn't live by a certain value and they learned a hard lesson. So I still have a lot of faith in Blizzard, to be honest with you. Like, one of the reasons that I think you're seeing a lot of people leaving isn't because like people are getting kicked out by Activision or whatever. It's just there's a lot of like kind of reason you go to Blizzard, if you will. I tell people that they have like a barrel of Blizzard energy, that you either do things that tap your energy or you do things that refill it. And right now, I had a colleague at Blizzard, I actually really love this. He used to say that what happens, Blizzard kind of goes in this cycle, and the same thing to agree with Activision, where every once in a while they breathe deeply in. And that tends to be when they lose money. You don't see a lot of games coming out. They might have layoffs and stuff. And then, but when they exhale excellence. So the last time this happened, D3 wasn't going well, layoffs, they breathed in, and then Hearthstone and Overwatch came out. And so right now we're just in a breathe-in cycle where they're not a company that knows how to deal with not making money hand over fist very well. And I think they're trying desperately to get good at it. But to be honest with you, one thing that I always think is really important, you'll hear from a lot of people at Blizzard that it's like very trust-based and consensus-based. They're slow for a reason. Like, there's not a lot of top-down architecture, actually. Like, it's actually what hurts. All the teams are very empowered to do their own thing. And sometimes it really bites Blizzard. Like, their leadership is so unwilling to tell teams what to do. When I was in a team like BattleNet, where we're trying to help everybody and try to centralize decisions and try to make things, whatever, all of them going off and doing their own thing, makes it actually very hard to achieve things very quickly. So very often when you see decisions coming out of Blizzard or Activision, believe it or not, they're more likely to come from the specific team that made the decision. And then the leadership of the company is trying to reorient and protect what they did. Because like that's what leadership does. They take the blame even if it's not their fault. So it's a very long-winded way of saying like yes and no, but I really think that it's not as bad as people think.
Okay, so basically, the April Fool's joke was actually on Bungie's fault, then, not Activision pushing them.
Which April Fool's joke are we talking about? Because there's plenty.
The cell phone game that nobody wanted.
So let me tell you about that one. I think I'm more particularly defensive of Diablo Immortal because I worked on the team, or rather, I worked very closely with the team.
Mm-hmm.
And for everything about Blizzard internally, there were certainly some people that were like, "Hey, maybe this isn't the greatest announcement in the world for BlizzCon right now." But to be honest with you, most people that I worked with and know, like in their mind, they were just making a great new Diablo game. There was a significant portion of people that I worked with that were really shocked at of course, in hindsight, you can kind of look at it and see the setup. And without telling you things that I can't really tell you, there were a lot of other things that were planned. So I think that Blizzard really often runs aground of their "it's not ready till it's ready" type of thing. So like often they get themselves into situations where Diablo Immortal was not necessarily going to be the flagship, but that's just kind of what ended up happening. BlizzCon tends to get planned all the way up, from February all the way up to November. And like I said, I think they really saw it as, hey, they got to know that a D4 is coming. This is like just a cool new fun game. And like what I will say is, like, yes, there is Chinese development, but when you talk to most people at Blizzard, it's actually more common that they forget to include China experience, and like it's really something where we're like, oh crap, what about China? Like, how do we even do that? Like, so the priority around it, I think, is much less than people think. And like ultimately, one reason why I keep trying to tell people, like, yeah, give Diablo Immortal a chance, is that there is a massive, fairly large, passionate team at Blizzard in California that are basically running the design and art of the game, and they're all ex-Diablo guys. Like, they all love it. They're not treating it like a mobile game, and they fought for 6 to 8 months making sure that the business model and the way the game is treated is a proper Blizzard experience. So like ultimately, yeah, the way the announcement kind of sucked and they really didn't roll it out. But and I think Wyatt, who is an amazing guy, like probably was just under a lot of pressure. I mean, this is a guy that worked on Diablo 3 for multiple years. He's on stage. He said something in like the heat of the moment that became a meme. Kind of sucks. But like, I don't know. Ultimately, I think there's just a lot of misconnections that add up to something that I really believe, like, fast forward 5 years from now, everyone's going to be really happy that they can play Diablo 4 and they can, be on their phone and play Diablo Immortal. I think the technical alpha is about to come out. I mean, the game's definitely gone through a development hell, don't get me wrong, but people really give a shit, and the reason they kept pushing it out was to make sure it was good. And I'm no longer at Blizzard, but when I last played the game internally, it's super, super fun. I'm going to be a fan of it when it comes out, and I feel like people just, you don't always see all the mechanisms that are happening. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these things are just inadvertent mistakes, or just people in the heat of the moment didn't realize how it came off,
Okay. You see, and that's the thing. Everybody here on the panel knows, and most of the people in the chat, that I'm a fan about expanding the lore. So anything that helps promote more of the game, of the base game. So even if it is a cell phone game or like a standalone DLC that's not part of the main characters, stuff like that, I'm all about that. Even if it, let's throw Halo under the bus. You went from first person shooter back to an RTS, you know what I mean? So anything like that, I'm all about that stuff.
Keep Halo out from under the bus, Tread. Please.
Well, I'm just saying, it's just,
yeah. They even had those Spartan Assault games.
Yes,
what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I like them because it gave you another thing, and I always use ODST as the prime example. Everybody wanted to be Master Chief, but guess what? You're not. You're just another peon, another human trying to, make your way through. But that was the cool part, is because you're actually expanding more information with what's going on. I mean, look at all the books that we're reading with Mass Effect and Halo. There's more lore to all these games. So, like, I didn't personally see anything wrong with it. It's just the timing was off, and it's cool to see that there's a lot more in the background. I just figured I wanted to kind of point that out, that a lot of people jump to conclusions a lot of times. We all do it. I do it. It's just we see Activision. Oh, they're the evil empire, they ruined Blizzard. Internally there's other factors that happen. So I like to bring this stuff out to be a little bit more common sense versus reactionary, because a lot of people react with feelings.
I mean, don't get me wrong. The people aren't entirely wrong. There's definitely a little bit of pervasive influence that Activision pushes that makes certain decisions happen. But I think in terms of all the decisions that people attribute to Activision, I don't think that's a fair thing to level with them. But like I said, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, that's not true at all. Like, it's definitely, but it's more like that one thing where it's like slow machinations that you don't really see happening. And it's more about putting pressure on certain situations. But in terms of like the game development and the roadmap, it actually was always surprising to me how much autonomy they continue to grant to Blizzard. Most of the people being in Blizzard's leadership are people that have been there forever. Even with a lot of the people like leaving and started, going over to Dreamhaven and stuff, you still have a ton of people there that are very committed to their cause. So like, I always feel bad because like there's so many people there that really care. And sometimes people just make mistakes.
Something I want to say.
That happens with every game company, also, not just Activision, Blizzard. So
definitely.
Yeah. There's actually a panel member on this show. He's not here today, but if he would have found out that you're from, that you spent time at Blizzard, he would probably ask for an autograph because he is like a pure Blizzard fan. Like he's one of those like super WoW fans. And the minute Shadowlands dropped, he like had the pre-order ready. He was all ready to go. He loves the WoW Armory. I mean, he just loves Battle.net and everything. So he would be super excited to have gotten to talk to you. I wish he was kind of here. He would have so many questions for you.
That was always a surreal experience for me because like I had a few times when I was working at BlizzCon. I had a couple of colleagues that experienced this where I've been asked for my autograph and I'm like, who the hell am I? Like that's never like, it's always like fun, but it never really, especially for most of the people that work at Blizzard that are not like, well-known game developers and stuff, like you don't expect that, but it's, especially like one thing with the exception of obviously this year, like I've been to BlizzCon the last like 6 years. And it was always by far my favorite thing. And part of it was because like you really can have conversations with people and you can feel the energy and the appreciation coming off of them. So that's cool.
Yeah, there's just so much passion there, I think. I know that you said that you're a workaholic. So probably working at Blizzard, you were probably working on multiple things. Did you ever have time to like really play Diablo or play WoW?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say that there was definitely a correlation between like the higher up in leadership I got at Blizzard, the less time I had to play games. But I still try very hard to play as much as I can. I don't play as much as I used to. Actually, a joke we used to have is that Diablo 3 used to be a thinking game for a lot of people because like if you play it at a low enough level, you can just sit there and kind of click. You like, if you're running through a dungeon or a rift or something and you're geared enough, like you don't really need to pay attention. So it kind of becomes relaxing. But I mean, WoW is one of those games where I feel like I'm kind of like, I'm a patient that I keep forgetting. Like I'm not really into MMOs. I mean, I love the WoW lore and I loved Warcraft 3 and I'm into all that stuff. And every time I'm like, new expansion, this is it. I'm going to get into MMOs. I'm going to get into WoW. I play through like the campaign content, I do a bunch of dungeons and then I chicken out doing a raid and I'm like, well, WoW, I'll see you for the next expansion. Personally, I'm a huge Heroes of the Storm fan. Like I was actually even before I joined Blizzard when it was in beta, and I still play a ton of probably the most amount of Heroes of the Storm, and I have spent an embarrassing amount of money on Heroes of the Storm. I'm all into like skins and that kind of thing. But I'd say like I'm like kind of one of those ones where I'll kind of play my fill of Diablo and I'll play a lot of it. And then I'll be like, well, that's enough Diablo for a few years or a year or something. And then at some point I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to just play through the campaign for no reason or something like that. So, I mean, I always tend to return to it. And like, I'd say other games like Hearthstone's one of those games where I've tried really hard to be good at it, but I can only be good if I'm not paying attention. Like if I'm like trying to play a game while I'm doing work and I'm like, oh crap, how did I win? But then otherwise I can't like beat an adventure to save my life for some reason. So I don't know. That's like my kind of relationship with the games is really kind of enjoying it. I'm more of a narrative type guy. Like Mass Effect's one of my favorite games. Xenogears, Tricoden 2.
So which
Like,
one's your favorite game of all time then?
Tricoden 2 for sure, hands down.
Yeah.
I just
old PlayStation game, right?
Old sprawling RPG. Tell me a freaking great story. I'm a huge fan of headquarters systems, like in Dragon Age and Tricoden 2. Like, yeah, let me build my massive base. You know, those kind of things really work for me. But kind of what you were talking about before, Dreadful, about like the lore and stuff. Like, that's one of the reasons why I'm actually into Heroes, because I'm not really into MOBAs otherwise, but like I'm really into seeing these characters that I love come to life in other ways. That's why I'm like, yeah, show me the movies, show me the shows, the cutscenes. Like, I'll watch all that. Like, give me all the lore. I'll just dip myself in that. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the games I wish that they would go back to, and I know it's probably dated now, but Warcraft Adventures, Lord of the Clans. You know what I mean? That was it looks so cool back in the day, and that was what, 95, 98 area. I guess it got canceled in 98, if I recall.
And the mid to early 90s were such a great time for games. Oh,
right?
So good.
That first, I believe it was the first person StarCraft, Ghost.
Yeah, Ghost. There's kind of a running joke at Blizzard that Ghost isn't canceled; it's just on an indefinite hiatus. I think it was actually third person for a bit because it was like very stealth focused. Yeah, I was actually pretty excited for that. I'm kind of sad it never came out.
The games from the 90s that I loved the most were probably like the Leisure Suit Larry, the Sam & Max, and then earlier than that would be like Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle. I love those games, man.
So like adventure games and stuff, like really
the
cool.
point and click stuff. Yeah.
When it came to that, Full Throttle from LucasArts, that was one of my favorites. I mean, and they just finally brought them back, remastered.
Man, I gotta tell you, I miss old school LucasArts.
Right.
The guy logo with the.
Yeah.
Anything with that logo on it, I'll play it. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah, two of those games y'all just mentioned are on Game Pass.
Yeah, well, actually, what was it? Grim Fandango. They fixed a bug. There was some sort of code that you couldn't complete a certain mission, or you get stuck in the elevator. So they fixed it on this remaster.
Nice.
So, but hopefully, talking about this, maybe Blizzard will take our heed of fandom and bring out the two games we talked about, Warcraft and the StarCraft ones.
I have no comment.
Maybe.
But
I think it would take mountains to move to be able to do anything, because it takes a lot, especially with the publishing arm, the marketing arm, and management. It's definitely not easy because it's such a large company to get things pushed through.
Well, making those 90s games now has got to be easy. I mean, compared to what Call of Duty, what the technology they're doing now, just remake it a little bit, and here you go.
I can tell you for sure the biggest problem with Blizzard making games is that it's never good enough to go out. Like, basically every game you've ever played from Blizzard, it was like a compromise for them to release it. It just wasn't ready. It was never ready. So I actually, like, honestly, their perfectionism sometimes, like, I'd say like one of the missteps, like with pushing War 3 Reforged out before it was ready, they learned a hard lesson about, like, we should have listened to the development team telling us they needed more time. But in general, all the ones that are like they're developing like a ton of like incubation titles, doing the find the fun stuff, and there are some that are like shockingly close to what you're talking about, but whether or not they see the light of day, who knows?
I want to go over to Nzxt a little bit for you and just talk about specifically what would you say that your main priority at Nzxt is, and what is your main focus at Nzxt?
Well, my main priority, main focus. I mean, I can kind of answer that in a couple different ways, but I would say like there's kind of like short-term focuses and priorities, and then kind of longer-term ones. So when I look at, like, very honestly, my kind of short-term, I joined to kind of lead all the design teams at Nzxt, and that contains the hardware, creative, and brand teams, and interactive, because my title is officially design and brand, VP of design and brand.
Does that include the website, or is that just like the actual PC or cases and stuff? Okay.
No, it includes everything. We believe very strongly in a centralized design model. So everything you see coming out of Nzxt runs through the design and brand team in some way. But for me, the big priority is like, especially when you're kind of growing in the way that Nzxt has, even though we're not a new company, it's a lot of the design teams were kind of operating very much as kind of autonomous smaller teams. So to me, it's like kind of growing into like a cohesive design team as we get bigger and bigger, and starting to tie all those experiences together more. I think we do a very good job already, but you can always have much more synchronization. So getting to the point where like the experience that you're dealing with Nzxt between our software, between our website, between our hardware, like making sure those experiences are more synchronized and feel more cohesive together. That's like a long-term focus. Like very honestly, for me, the focus right now is I see a lot of my role is making sure that all the designers across Nzxt have the room and the material and the tools to be creative and to work really well. And the output of the design team in Nzxt would blow anyone's mind how much they get done with how few people. So the initial kind of operation is getting the teams into healthy places and into a structure, and growing the team to appropriately match the amount of insane crap that we're doing. I'm gonna say, I almost said shit, but like we're just doing so much cool stuff. I know that sounds cheesy and whatever, but we're really doing a lot, and it all kind of falls into these main teams, because we're one of the teams that works with everybody throughout the company. Like for the most part, if you're seeing something, we probably touched it in some way. And that kind of scales beyond just visuals. It's like copywriting, it's what our social media posts look like, what our packaging is, manuals to like how we design the products and stuff like that. There's a lot there. So to me, it's like kind of starting to kind of setting the fundamentals up for the team to grow to a much larger design organization than they are now. So that's kind of short term. And then of course, like to me, longer term, it's about tying all that stuff together. Right now, there's not enough cohesion between those things. Like if I look at kind of the design quality that we deliver with a lot of our hardware, and what we deliver for CAM and across like our website, they're individually good, but they have a lot of places to improve. And to me, the real mind-blowing moment starts unlocking when all these things start working in tandem together cleanly and in a way that really feels good. So there's a lot of work to do there. But to me, that's kind of like what ultimately I'm trying to look at is like, what is every element of the experience? Like to give you an idea, like very honestly, sometimes I will spend my weekends or nights, like I guarantee you that I have watched almost every unboxing video of an Nzxt product that is on YouTube. Because like we're very interested in like everything from what is it like to order on the website, to deal with customer service, to pull it out of the box, to order it, to build in the computer or build in the case, to turning it on, to how it integrates the software, what's onboarding look like. We have a lot of places we can improve. So obviously there's a lot of work to be done there, but my job ultimately, even though I don't tell all of those different teams how they do their job, I definitely look at it from the perspective of how do we create a great experience for our customers. And I often kind of look at like design, ultimately design thinking usually means being customer first. So while as everyone, it really does care a lot about what our customers have, it's generally speaking, design's role to always be like, what's the customer want? What's the need? How are we delivering this? What's the experience we're trying to deliver? I think a lot of the designers are probably getting tired. Like the amount of times that I say, what's success look like? Who is this for? What are we trying to deliver to them? How does this support our main pillars of design? Does this support the community? Is this high quality design? Is it accessible and simple? Like, those are big pillars of our brand and the way that we map them. So again, like kind of a dodgy, kind of all over the place answer to your question, but hopefully it's helpful.
One thing I want to say is one of the guys that you recently picked up or worked with is a good friend of mine, Pope, and I'm so glad to actually see him be able to put his kind of like his art into a real product, because we see a lot of fan art from him, but now to see him actually be able to work for a company, get his stuff out there, and then whatever you guys do with it, this fantastic. So I'm so glad that you actually picked him up as a designer to work with. I'm just amazed For the longest time, everybody was like, "Oh, Xbox, oh, PlayStation, you should hire this guy," and they would never respond, you know. And now all of a sudden, people are seeing like Nzxt designs and PC cases, and they're like, "Wow, we can't wait till that comes out. Wow, we want that," you know. So it's really exciting to see that, man.
Well, I mean, I could tell you like a little bit of the story. You know, I won't reveal too much about the mystery of Pope, but what ended up, like, honestly, the way that it kind of came about was, I like one of the things, like I said, we're very design led. Like Johnny, our CEO, his email address is designer in Nzxt. So like we're obviously often me and him are talking about things and you know what we can do, how we can partner, how we can improve things, and he happened to mention to me like, hey, have you seen this design Xbox Pope guy? He's like, you know, wouldn't it be great for like to work with him or something? I think he said it kind of offhandedly, and I was like, yeah, why not? So I reached out to him on Twitter and stuff, and it's not going to be out yet, but we partnered with him on a promotional design that, like I said, it's not technically, it's a partnership one with someone else, so I can't tell you what it is, but it will be out eventually. It's a super cool design. But we were kind of working with on that just as a kind of a one-off like Xbox Pope collaboration. And basically kind of the opportunity came up in terms of like talking to him and working with him where I was like, oh, we would love to like, you know, hire you on full time just because he's a super talented designer. And to be honest with you, we actually work with a number of kind of third parties sometimes to design case wraps or work on craft. I mean, we ultimately drive all of it internally, but it usually takes us a decent amount of time to get designers that like really clock into our aesthetic, like they understand what we call the DNA of how we work. And Pope is one of the ones that like picked up on it like instantly. Like I didn't have to like me and Jin, the creative director and designers, we didn't have to coach him too hard on what he needed to change. He wasn't doing a bunch of stuff that was out of character. It was just like almost immediately he picked up on it and he understood it. So when I we figured out that there was an opportunity to hire him on, I was like, yeah, let's totally go ahead and do it, because like we're like, as you can see, we actually have a, you know, side promotion. We have a, you know, a Raptor case kind of promotion going on right now for the holidays. We're raising money for St. Jude. We do all sorts of things like that where we wrap cases for promotions or and of course, like we're always working on a number of craft partnerships with game developers and stuff. So not to mention like we're always doing all sorts of, you know, nonsense with treating our models differently, or, you know, we get to partner with a ton of game developers. So having someone like Pope that can pick up an aesthetic and understands our aesthetic and can marry them together and like really is deep in the community and gives a shit about gaming. That's really important for us. So like, you know, and hey, like, you know, originally we were kind of joking, like technically we designed the H1 before the Xbox One came out. So he's already been designing on top of our case designs anyway. So wasn't too much of a leap to be like, hey, why not design on an H5 or an H7? So super excited to have him though.
Yeah, I mean, he does great work. I mean, you could see my background. This was a custom one that he designed specifically for me. I'm just trying to move out of the way. But yeah, you know, and it's cool to see him expand and get the recognition, and you guys also benefiting from his talents. So now they got a second legend, not just the first legend, Shawn. You know, so but when it comes to, because I was also doing some more research, I was looking at now the cam software.
Hello.
Now we could use that with any PC. Whose idea was that to do that? Do you know? Was that something part of you?
So there are definitely many decisions that predate me. So I can only speak to kind of the history of what I've learned or know about. But I don't know who specifically his idea was cam and making it accessible. But I know that Johnny specifically, like you'll hear his name a lot because like Nzxt has always been his company. Never took outside investment. He's super passionate about the way that it goes, but the general ethos of serving the community really is there. Like, even though, you know, we're always trying to improve it and we do use it to service our own tools, like he definitely had this vision of, we want to produce something that is useful to gamers and to the PC community, independent of whether or not like the way that we tend to usually talk about fans of NZXT is like, you can be a customer of ours whether or not you've actually purchased from us. That's why, like, we really heavily invest in our Discord server, the NZXT Club, and doing a lot of community stuff. Like, very honestly, if you're a fan of NZXT, it doesn't matter if you've purchased from us. We want you to have a good experience, and we want, like, ultimately, our vision and mission are not about getting PC hardware on your desk. It's about PC gamers having a great experience. And we honestly, at some point in the past, I wasn't there for this, but we definitely looked at PC monitoring software and the other ones that are kind of on there, and just a lot of SIs, a lot of developers, a lot of people, like, either you're dealing with open source stuff that's just from the goodness of the hearts of people in the community that are working really hard, or you're dealing with a lot of people that are much more focused on getting hardware on your desk than not to say that they don't produce solid software, but for us, it's a huge investment area because we want people to have a great experience with it and not have to kind of rely on the open source of it. So, ultimately, we're always it's always gonna be free. That's a vision we talk about all the time. CAM is meant to be useful for both people that buy our hardware and don't.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Jeff, who said hi, is one of the product managers on CAM. So I would also like to pimp one of the new features that just came out, Profile Sync. It's one of my favorite things on there. So also, they just recently released mini mode, which is really cool. So the Profile Sync thing is like, because I'm one of those people that I have like a mode for everything, and I like turn my computer like different colors based, like I have a Heroes profile, I have a Mass Effect profile. So Profile Sync is one of the features where you can assign it to a time of day or a game or whatever. Change your lighting and your lighting, your fan curves. So obviously it scales up and down with how much hardware you have. But even for me, like even right now, I switched this to a podcasting profile so that my fans are running at silent instead of performance. So I'm a huge fan of CAM, and I'm not going to tell you about any things we're working on for it, but it's going to keep getting cooler. But
yeah. Like I didn't even know about it until we found out that we were going to interview you, and I was like, how did I miss this? So it's really cool to see, even for us that we're supposed to know better, right? And we're still missing stuff, and so that's why I was like, I felt the need to bring it up. I also noticed the hue lighting that you've integrated with it, so that's pretty cool. So it's not, because how many times we watch people build PCs and they're like, well, we have to use this software for this, and then we got to use this software for this because the fans and the lighting we're using, it just don't match up. So it's really cool to see the integration with that too.
And I know the CAM team has been looking into that. That's a problem they're constantly trying to solve. Multiple kind of pieces of hardware integrating RGB, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm sorry, I apologize. My daughter called me in the middle of the stream there for a second and tried to make it sound urgent, and it wasn't urgent. And I muted the Zoom mic, but not the feed mic, so I apologize. Sometimes technical difficulties, but I'll fix it on the podcast feed.
Cool.
So, I didn't hear nothing, so you should be good.
I just want to apologize to the audience.
Yeah, you're all good.
Avis said he heard it.
Oh, okay.
One thing I wanted to comment on, because I play some on PC. I might primarily play on console, but I have been doing more and more PC gaming. But so I don't know all the technical aspects of like what all the different numbers mean, like for like graphics cards and RAM and motherboards and all this stuff, right? And sometimes for somebody like me, it's intimidating when you go to one of these gaming websites for a PC and you see all that and you have no idea what you're getting into. I noticed on y'all's website when I had clicked on it recently that it's very simple, even for somebody like me, to see, okay, this is a good streaming PC, this is a good gaming PC. And it seems like it's not intimidating. Is that like a design choice by from you guys to make it more consumer friendly, or is that just a happenstance, I guess?
No, 100% intentional. I think I mentioned one of our core pillars around design is simplicity and accessibility.
Yeah.
We 100% want to make PC gaming more accessible to anybody that wants to get into it. I definitely agree. It's a super intimidating process right now. Like if you're doing your classic kind of PC part picker type of thing, which, you know, for what it is, it's a great website, but you have to go find the parts, make sure they're compatible. You have to research. You have to go buy them from different places.
Several people have recommended that site to me, but when I go on there, I get lost. I don't know what I'm looking at, you know, so it's not for me, you know what I mean?
I think like we're obviously a more focused brand and are really high quality, so we don't have as many things, but we like in terms of tends to focus on like high quality. I definitely think that we want people to PC building is a really fun and rewarding experience, and I think that like you know, sometimes people have life and they have different priorities and they have different price points and everything, and it depends what you want to play. And ultimately, I think that we kind of look at it as if you're able to make gaming part of your life in some way, then that's kind of what we're here to help with. And like I said, it's not like it's, you know, it is as easy as it is nowadays. It's easier than ever to build a PC, but to your point, it's still complicated. There's a lot of snafus. There's a lot of learning, especially to configure a PC together. But once you've done it, it kind of like I said, it becomes something that can really like spark joy for you, like, you know, and especially if you've done it yourself, it's really fun. But like I'll totally shamelessly admit, the one that's sitting on my desk right now, I asked our build team to build it for me, even though there is a tradition in Nzxt that every employee must build at least one custom computer themselves. So I very shamelessly have not quite done that due to the pandemic and everything like that, but I really like love it. And like I had one of those people where I really appreciate not having to like, not just like, I know how to, I've of course built PCs for a while, know how to do it, but I'm terrible at cable management, and like my PCs don't look good. Our builders know what the hell they're doing, and like my PC looks awesome. People are like, wow, like you built that looks so good. I'm like, yeah, I can make the lights change and stuff, but like, you know, I didn't do anything. But I think that there's kind of a sliding scale of it. But I appreciate that we kind of live in this world now where it used to be that when you bought PCs, like the compact Presario, like half of the stuff was soldered in, and trying to like open it kind of sucked. But nowadays, like it's much more flexible to buy one part from one place and buy another, and it's kind of up to you if you want to go on that sojourn. But like I said, I think that for us, making this stuff more accessible and making it easier to get into, like we want more PC gamers. That's what we want. We want more PC gamers that are enjoying the community, that, you know, that can get into what, like it's kind of like what level is good for you. Like some people just don't have time to get into building. Some people are just starting out. Some people want to play like, you know, Modern Warfare at like all the highest settings. Like some people really care about getting the best FPS and like Valorant or something. There's just a whole variety of people that have different uses. And I think it's, for us, it's just, hey, if you want to put gaming into your life and it's important, and you know, you want to have it be an experience that sits in a room or on your desk, you know, how do we get you into that world? And, you know, how do we help you, you know, things like some people really care about, especially like, you know, newer experiences like streaming. Like we're just now looking into like, how do we make streaming easier? It's such a fun experience. It's so collaborative, but it's, to your point, same thing with building a PC. Like it's so intimidating to get into it. So for us, it's just constantly trying to find, how do we lower the barrier? How do we make it a little easier? Like, you know, these things, you know, there's like, I think there's often kind of like a gatekeeping element of it. Like you went through all this stuff, so, you know, it's not as valuable, but I don't think that we think that's true. It's just, yeah, it's just different strokes for different people. How does it fit into your life, and how do we make it easier for you? So we're going to keep doing that for sure.
I think it's good. I think somebody like me could, you know, would be more likely to buy a PC with the website designed that way it is, because it just looks like, okay, I can just purchase this and it's going to work, right? And I don't have to worry about a bunch of other things, you know, but it still feels like it's not a generic thing that you bought at, you know, Best Buy or, you know, whatever. You know,
I mean, I remember way back when I was in like 8th grade, I actually used to, one of the first jobs I had is I went to a Catholic school, and people would basically donate a lot of computers, and basically everybody didn't really do it out of the goodness of their heart. They always donated a shitty computer that like barely worked, and they were like, oh, yeah, I don't want this anymore. I'll donate it to this school/church. And what I used to do during lunchtime is look at all those parts and basically see what we could scavenge to put together functional computers that the school could use. And I remember like at that point it was figuring out what these could do. Sometimes like you didn't have the right converter cable. Like sometimes one time we had a thing that a dog had peed on it and they donated it. Like we get it working, could we clean it?
Yeah.
And I also remember even once you got it working, like getting all the drivers installed, and like it's like one of those things where honestly though, PC building has become so much easier than it used to be. But even now there's still one of the parts goes bad, you got to deal with all the warranties, you got to get different shipping providers. And of course nowadays, because of the pandemic, it's so in demand. The first problem is finding someone that actually has it. Like, you know, if you're not like a system integrator or you're not lucky, try getting like a Ryzen 9 right now or something, like, or any of the 30 series cards. Like, it's just sometimes there's just not enough supply in the world. I think I went to when I moved recently, and I basically was like, oh, I'm going to move my monitor myself because I don't trust the movers. And then anyway, I busted it, and I had to go to Micro Center because I needed to work. And I was like, well, I need to go get a monitor, and I can't wait for it to be delivered. And I got there, and I was like, oh, what is this freaking line that's wrapping around the store? And it was this just massive line. Of course, they were letting you in. And I'm sitting there waiting for them to go get my monitor. I'm kind of watching people go through the checkout line. And I got to tell you, it was like 98% of the people would get up to the line and then they'd roll over a cart of like a bunch of PC components. And I was like, damn, all of these people are building PCs right now.
Yeah.
Just like line around the block. Because I remember like pulling up to Micro Center and I was like, what is going on? Like, is there an event going on? And it was just like a random Friday or something. And yeah, like I said, I think even as it's gotten so much better, but there's still a lot of snafus to it. And I think if you're someone that doesn't have a lot of time, or you don't want to go that deep, it's worth. Yeah.
What's that like for you guys though, as this pandemic hits? You know, you guys obviously were probably going to have more restrictions on you guys on how you manage things and do things internally, but also at the same time, conversely, the demand increases probably dramatically, I would assume, from wanting your products. So how does that work at a company like this where, okay, we have to figure out how to manage what we're doing differently right now and consolidate however, but also you need to make more, right? You need to increase production. You know what I mean?
I would say that what you're talking about is the unsung heroes of Nzxt, which is the builders in our warehouses.
Yeah.
Basically what we've generally done as a company is best we can. Like, we have a lot of COVID restrictions. We do weekly testing, that kind of thing. When we detect it, we isolate and send people home. We sanitize, whatever. But generally speaking, I'd say that the team across the company has done really well in maintaining the massive demands. I think like the biggest thing that hits us is, to your point, is just getting enough inventory sometimes. But even then, I think our operations team does a fantastic job. They seem to sometimes pull inventory out of the woodwork, like getting a hold of the 30 series cards and the new AMD Radeons and stuff. Like, sometimes it's amazing that they can get what they can get. But yeah, I mean, you can see that like one of our things we're generally known for with Build is like the Blitz service, where we get your computer out in 2 days. That's something that we really haven't been able to do. I mean, every once in a while we're able to get back on track where we have enough time to do it. But generally now, with how much demands, we've basically just been giving our builders more time and doing our best to get supply. But I think, like, generally speaking, when the pandemic first hit, yeah, it was rough. Like, we had times where we were just out of stuff. But overall, like, we generally speaking just, especially during the pandemic, we had a number of temporary workers. We hired, I think, hundreds of them, and we still have most of the design development support teams that don't support operations are working from home. Like me, I haven't been to the office for a while. So we're kind of doing the best we can there. But I think overall, everyone's done a fantastic job. Everyone at Nzxt is super passionate. And I often tell people that, like, I actually think it's something that we don't tell enough people about, that like when you order from us, those are people pulling your parts and building a PC, testing it for you, putting it in the box, shipping it out. Like, these things are not done by a machine or whatever. These are people that are trained in how to build computers, and they're really cool guys and girls. They have a bunch of anime posters all over the warehouse. Like, so they're just doing the best they can. Like I said, separated work areas, like larger shifts. We check for COVID all the time, so we're doing the best we can. But I think the team's generally done pretty well. And obviously for the year, it's been overall good for us. But we've been doing the best we could, trying to also support charities and that are supporting COVID. So like I said, all you can do is the best that you can do.
Yeah, y'all actually have a video of y'all's how y'all build a PC actually on your website, which is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, it's a little dated of a video, but it's more or less what we do. But generally speaking, when I've been in the headquarters, it's definitely really fun to go see the warehouse guys working, doing their thing. It's and like I said, they can cable manage like I can't even imagine doing it like that. Like I've watched a couple like Jay's 2 Cents and like Greg Salazar trying to teach me how to cable manage. I got like halfway through the video and I was like, nope, just gonna have the build team do it.
See, that's why I like my 1990s case.
Just shove it all under the shroud. It's totally fine.
Can't see it if don't block a fan.
The one thing that I really do like about Nzxt from what I've seen, and I actually don't know a whole lot about Nzxt except from what Pope has told me, except from, when I see influencers or people in the media talk about Nzxt and show off their cases, but everything that I've seen, Nzxt looks very clean, looks very modern, it just looks very nice. It's not like those old days of PC towers where they had like weird grooves and buttons in weird places. And one thing I still can't stand about my Dell that I have is got a proprietary motherboard, and technically it should fit an upgraded i7. But when I went to put in that upgraded i7, even though it has the right slots and the software on the board is not capable of reading the i7 properly. And so many people are upset at Dell for that series Inspiron because it was like a mid-tier gaming PC. And, people like to buy those to upgrade them. But what I'm going to say is, if you're going to go with the company, I'm honestly going to say go with a company like Nzxt, because it seems like if somebody wants to upgrade something later on, it's probably a lot easier doing it from Nzxt versus like a big company like Dell or IBM. It just, I don't know, it just became a hassle for me because I got an i7 now sitting on the side and I don't have a board for, so very disappointed.
Yeah, well, I mean, I definitely, if you look at our cases, ultimately they're designed as best we can to accommodate any type of part. And if you're ordering from our build service, obviously, depending on like whether or not you're ordering custom or the ones that we pre-build, ultimately it's still the same thing. People are pulling parts, they're building them, and we're buying parts from all sorts of other manufacturers. We're not just in it to sell you Nzxt parts. Obviously, we think they're the better ones and they look really nice. But like, to your point, like if you go on build, you're actually pretty unlikely to get an Nzxt like motherboard, because like, PC building is about finding the right components that serve what you need your build to do. It seems like it's just such an antithesis to us to like put something proprietary in there. Like, I mean, it's obviously one thing to be like, well, obviously you're going to get the absolute best experience by combining our parts and our software. Like that's, that's kind of we have control over those things, so we can make them go well together. But to me, setting out to make something be exclusive, like just doesn't make sense. And I think for us, it's, again, we want more PC gamers and more PC builders. We don't necessarily care if you're doing it with all Nzxt parts, other than obviously we think they're great and we prefer we prefer them, and then we think they deliver some of the better, more aesthetic experiences with a really good performance for what you're getting. So ultimately more PC gamers.
Yeah, I was talking to Pope not that long ago, and he was telling me, he's like, I never really got into PC gaming, although he's like, his son was into PC gaming, and he's like, yeah, now I love my PC and I play on my PC and do all the stuff on my PC, and I'm like, damn, Pope, what'd you get? He's like, oh, I got myself a nice Nzxt. It's really cool. And I'm looking at my PC with its 1060 3 GB graphics card, and he's like, "Yeah, I can run Rainbow Six smooth. I can play Call of Duty smooth." And I'm like, 60 not go smooth. I can tell you that much. Oh man. So
I will not reveal the details, but I happen to know that Pope's PC is a monster, amazing PC. He is a fantastic.
Yeah, after
fantastic build.
he is now a living legend of loving the Nzxt brand, and he doesn't even understand his PC. He's just like, it's a beast. That's what he says.
Speaking of Rainbow Six, he's not a bad Rainbow Six player either. I have played with the man and his son as well, and he's not too shabby. So
I am awful at Rainbow Six, although actually of all the games, especially like our creative team, many of them play Siege and are way better at it than me.
Yeah,
I'm so embarrassingly bad at it that I won't play, but a lot of Rainbow Six fans, which is I think is why our Rainbow Six case is so good, because like we checked with all the fans internally about how we like what we needed to do with it.
Yeah,
but
they just custom built the PC around Rainbow Six because that's what they wanted, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, to me, it's like Rainbow Six is one of those games where I want to get into it, but I often say that you only have enough room for one MOBA in your life. And I feel like shooters are getting that way. Like you get into Rainbow Six and it's just like all the operators and all the roles and stuff. And I was like, I'm terrible at aiming. I don't know any of these things. I got to learn the meta. I got to learn about all the operators. I got to keep up with the patches. I've only got enough room for a couple of games in my life. And I don't know if since I'm so bad at shooting, if I should really invest in learning the meta for Rainbow Six Siege. But I try.
One thing I wanted to ask you is on the design perspective. Do you already have like a set dimensions of your cases, or are your designers responsible for coming up with unique, designs for your cases as well, and then figuring out how the inside of the cases should look? Or is it like, like a predetermined size for the case, and then the designers just work on the wraps? Or do they do like different things to like expand the case or change where maybe a glass panel might be, or how the wiring should be? Does designers work on all that too?
Yeah, so to give kind of like the best way to approach that answer is like, so we do have an industrial design team, and so they're kind of a separate, we call them design pillars. So there's an industrial pillar, a creative and brand pillar, and an interactive pillar, and each one of those have respective directors and then designers on each. So when we're talking about case design, that's basically Shin, who's been at the company for basically as long as Johnny is the director of industrial. And the way that it tends to work is it's kind of a back and forth. There are what are called product managers that kind of lead all of our product categories in terms of like market fit, features, competitors. Like they do a bunch of work up front to kind of figure out what we should be offering, what's important for the customer. And that generally kicks off a concept process for the type of product in which we go through a couple of things to greenlight it. But once it gets to that point, then the industrial team does a lot of research. We purchase a lot of competitive products. We evaluate them. We look at things, test materials, and they eventually will, working closely with the engineering team. So depending on the product, what tends to happen is that the engineering team will provide things like limitations, if you will. So it depends what it is. So certain things, the engineers have to make sure that like a PCBA works a certain way, or depending on what we're doing, if it needs to hold up a certain amount of weight, or certain things need to be positioned in certain places. And then the industrial team tends to take those requirements from both what the product manager is guiding us on terms of what features it needs to have. They tend to recommend generally dimensions and whatnot. So it's kind of a back and forth. So the designers do have some flexibility to be like, this is going to be a glass panel. It'll be this side. And, we'll go back and forth with the engineering team, trying to kind of compromise between the visual design that we want to achieve, the feature sets, and really work. And the features tend to map to like use cases. So most of our products are very focused on things like flexibility, cable management. So we tend to go down and think through what those are going to be and generally speaking, they'll produce 3D renders, and we'll go back and forth with our manufacturers and suppliers to make sure that they're possible to build. And we have a large portion of the process that requires us to go back and forth getting prototypes. We usually have a design prototype, an engineering prototype, and so most of the hardware though process is like, we're talking like 12 to 18 month schedules for hardware. Like they take a long time to develop. So, but generally speaking, if you've used a product, the industrial design team has had a lot of flexibility in developing out what the case looks like, what the features are. I would say that like it also depends how long we've been doing something. Obviously, we've been doing cases for a while. It's our sweet spot. So we have a lot of flexibility and a lot of knowledge in how to do cases. As we do like newer things, or we're working on coolers, we sometimes rely a lot on our suppliers to help us guide us on what the best thing is. But ultimately, we work together with their engineers, our engineers, our designers to come together with a good confluence of features, design, functionality, and engineering, along with like the price that we're trying to hit and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I would figure is a little bit more challenge in the PC and the hardware space, because with consoles, it's more or less like, a cycle every 10 years or every 13 years. But with PCs, there's always new and better parts coming out with, every 6 months, every year. So things like that. And then you guys have to be like on the edge of making sure that you have the top parts for the people that want the top specs, and then like a mid tier. So I always found that like a unique challenge for PC building and the PC space in general.
Mm-hmm. I mean, ultimately, that's why we have a decent sized product team. That's why we have product managers in each one of these categories. Most of the ones are all super awesome people. And usually when you talk to them, they know a ridiculous amount about the category. Like, so when you talk to the product manager over like coolers versus the product manager over cases, they know so much about that category and like what people are looking for in the technical details. And ultimately it's their job to figure out what people are looking for in the market, what features, what price point, which ones are served, which ones are underserved. But generally we do still have a pretty solid focus on having small amounts of products that are very carefully curated. We're not ever going to have 40 cases or anything like that. So we have to rely a lot on their judgment and curation. But like I said, every single one of them knows like an insane amount about their category, to the point where you almost sometimes have to back them off and be like, whoa, our customers might know this, but like, so much about it. Like if I know this much about a category, like the product manager's here. It's like that. It's like an iceberg of knowledge.
Midway, you still there, or is your mic muted? I wasn't sure if you had any questions.
I'm muted. It's just it's a learning experience for me. I'm more of a console guy. I've never really got on the PC. I mean, the last time I had a PC, I think it was like in the 90s. That was even playable on anything. They remember the last game I really played was Age of Empires 3. And those ID4 Independence Day Interactive discs.
I used to be super into Age of Empires 2. Like I was actually basically competitive in that game. It was one of my favorite RTSs of all time. Never got into 3 though, but 2 was awesome.
I did 3, and Warcraft 2 was one of my favorites back in the day. Like then after Xbox One, that was pretty much it for me in the PC area. But I guess there's like one thing I could like, for somebody that is into gaming and is, I guess you could say, eclectic in like platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, PC. What would you say to somebody that was interested in trying to get back into PC gaming?
What would I say to them? Well,
first buy an Nzxt, obviously, but then after that, what would you tell them?
So I guess what I would say is, I honestly think like I'm really not only into PCs. Like I'm into all the consoles and stuff. So you just gotta start with the kind of games that you want to play. And obviously, if you care a lot about like not just performance, but really having like a very kind of beautiful, highly controlled version of the game, I always kind of tell people that you don't need to go too crazy. By which I mean, you don't need to buy a $3,000 gaming PC to get started. You got to pick the game. Like, this is partially why our build service is focused this way, but really, like, you got to pick the game that you really want to play. And then the beautiful thing about PCs is you can keep upgrading them, and you can switch out individual parts. It's not like buying I'm going to throw Apple under the bus, even though I love Apple. It's not like buying a MacBook or buying a console, where basically, like, when they have a problem with it, they're like, we'll just give you a new one. Like, PCs are super modular. So I always tell people, like, if you're just starting to get in, like, pick a budget you feel really comfortable with. You know, like I said, you can do your research using like PC Part Picker. You can do those things. But if you really don't, you know, if you really don't want to get into it, you can go to a system integrator like Nzxt and get things like pre-built. Like, that's why we have a starter band. Like, it's not a cheap PC. Like, the way that I look at it is, if you don't want to spend, that's why I keep saying, like, it's, make it part of your life. Like, if you're not going to, build a space around it and try to, really enjoy it, like, it's probably not worth it for you to spend, $700 to $1,000 to build a computer and work on it. It's an investment. So you can kind of treat it like that. Like, start with the things that will work. Like, to your point, like, you can kind of find a good pre-built, which is always a good start, kicking off point. Or if you really want to get into the whole building, there's a ton of great YouTubers and videos that will teach you how to build. And PC Part Picker, you can always find like people that have lists of stuff and whatever. It just kind of depends on your investment. But I always tell people, figure out the games you want to play, figure out your budget, figure out how much work you want to put in, and then once you know those things, then you can kind of like I said, if you want to put in a ton of work, do your PC Part Picker research, buy things off of Newegg and Amazon and Micro Center. Or if you don't want, you can go to a place like Nzxt and get a pre-built. So it's not going to be the most baller gaming PC you've ever seen, but everything we offer is tuned for gaming. We've benchmarked it against these different games. It's a good starting point, and none of those things are proprietary or soldered in. It's going to be cable managed. You get like a 2-year warranty. So like, yeah, you go in, you can start replacing parts. What I always tend to tell people is, like, you kind of asked about do you build the case around it or the case first? Like, you probably want to start with the things that are going to have the biggest impact to the experience you want to have. Like, for most games, the GPU is kind of the big driver as to, like, I have one of my stories is way back, I was super excited to play SWTOR, like, when it first came out. And I had like a pretty decent computer. I bought one from Alienware at the time, back when they were like, not as Dell-like, and they were kind of still separated. And I had like what I thought was a pretty like, fancy ass computer. Like, it was like $2,000. I think I paid it down or whatever. And I installed SWTOR on all, and played it, and I was like, man, this looks like garbage. Why does this game look so bad? I thought it was going to be amazing, all these screenshots. And then I did like a little bit of research, like, why does SWTOR look bad? Someone was like, well, what kind of graphics card do you have? And I was like, oh, whatever, the Intel something. And they're like, no, you can do whatever. So I basically went to Best Buy, and I was like, give me the most expensive GPU that you have. Because at the time, I knew about PC building, but I didn't know much about that. And I got a 1080 Ti at the time, which was like the most expensive graphics card I ever had. Plugged it in, and I was able to go up from low settings all the way to ultra. And even though it's an MMO, I really enjoyed it. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. So like, you can kind of start with that kind of stuff. Like, the GPU is a big deal. The processors, need it to be good enough. It's a big deal. And then, like, if you're like me, like a designer where you're using Photoshop and After Effects and nonsense all the time, you need a ton of RAM. So I was like, yes, max out all of the RAM. And then I'm also one of these people where I like to keep like all my Dropbox and all my games. So I'm just like, they're like, how much hard drive space do you want? And I'm like, well, how many hard drives will fit in my computer? So the end of that story is I have 6 terabytes on this computer. I have multiple SSDs because I'm an absolute monster of just saving stuff. But ultimately, like I said, all these things are kind of to say, like, you got to really figure out what experience you want, what you want to spend. But I always tell people, start off with the game you want to play and how much you want to spend, and then go to YouTube. And like, people like Jay's 2 Cents, Greg Salazar, Linus, super accessible guys that will go everywhere from like, all right, we're going to cable manage this thing like in real time to like, let me talk to you about that part. So it's super easy to get into, but I don't know, it's a super long answer to your question, but hopefully it's helpful.
I'm going to add another one for.
Go ahead.
Add another one. Sorry, Paul's Hardware. That's another good one.
Yep.
Okay. And follow up to that. Okay, so you know a console generation is 7 to, you know, just being ballpark in here, like, you know, let's say 6 to 9 years, right? So for someone to keep up maintenance on their PC and to have a let's just say like a middle settings experience of on their computer, how often would you say that they would have to switch out a GPU/CPU or something along those lines just to try to keep quote unquote relevant to play their games?
Honestly, I feel like a lot of PC hardware actually has, like, most of them have like 10-year, 5-year warranties on them and stuff. But most PC components overall, graphics cards, cases, whatever, are usually on about 2-year refresh cycles, give or take. So I would say that if you want to be cutting edge, like you want to be like all the you know, the new hotness and everything, you're about on a 2-year cycle. That's about when NVIDIA and AMD tend to drop their stuff about every 2 years. Because as I mentioned, like developing out hardware is about a 12 to 14 month affair on a good day, a good year, whatever. So these things are being developed out that far in the future, and it's, you know, it's not usually worthwhile to develop something out every year because basically you're starting on the thing as soon as you ship the next one, and you're not able to learn about the material and what the customers are doing and what's going wrong and whatnot. So 2 years is probably about there, but it's different for every part. Like I said, GPUs tend to come out about every 2 years. And as you've looked with like the 30X cards and the AMD cards, they tend to be dramatic increases in performance. Whereas things like processors, you can get away with like you can have like, you know, a 10th gen or something now, but you can get away with having like an i5 or something and still do fine. Things like RAM don't change as much. So those are probably more like on a 5-year cycle. For the most part, like as long as your wattage and your efficiency rating is good on your PSU, those things will last you forever and a day. Like most PSUs come default with a 10-year warranty. So like, yeah, it just kind of, you gotta kind of look at the parts overall, but yeah, generally speaking, you should not be switching out parts more often than 2 years. And a lot of them will seriously last you much longer. Like honestly, I know people that are using like 1070 and 1080s NVIDIA cards that are still having a fantastic experience gaming, even though you can get like a, you know, a 3080, which is like 9 times the power and performance, you know, and like nonsense like ray tracing and RTX and stuff like that. Just, I guess it matters what kind of experience you want. Things like fans also last a pretty long time. And generally speaking, if you're getting like pretty high quality parts, they will also, like, so that's why all of our stuff has at least a 2-year warranty on it. You should expect any piece of hardware to last at least that long and probably more.
Building PCs is kind of like, it can be, you know, intimidating if you don't have the correct information. But yeah, thank you for your question. Thank you for your answers.
Sure.
I do have 2 questions on your Kraken series. We know that there's a limitation on the fluid inside. Is there like a recommendation? Because I didn't see it on, you know, changing them out for your radiators. Or
what do you mean? Like, you mean like when to change out an AIO or?
No, just
I mean,
the fluid.
I'm not really aware that we really recommend changing out the fluid. Like they're closed systems, they tend to work pretty well.
Oh, okay.
And I would say by the time you're getting to a point, like honestly, like an AIO should last you like, you know, 2 to 5 years easily, probably more like 5 years. And I think by the time you're going to want to switch out like a fluid or something like that, you should just be replacing it.
Okay. Because
just to clarify, like I don't know very much about like custom water cooled lines and stuff like that. Like you're doing your own loops and stuff. That's an entirely different thing. We only sell closed AIOs, like, you know, so generally speaking, you shouldn't have to mess with the fluid at all.
Okay. So the other one is, you know, you guys have a pretty cool looking 490. How come we don't have any 570s or 550s? What's wrong with AMD?
I mean,
I just
it's honestly, it's usually just supply, and like our product managers on build kind of choose which things we stock and which things we hold.
Okay.
So there's no problem. We're a big fan of AMD.
Okay.
A lot of times it's just kind of a combination of forecasting how much demand will there be, how much do we need to keep in stock, is this compatible with. A lot of times it mostly comes down to what are other parts that we keep in stock. And like, to be honest with you, at the scale that we work at, a lot of times it's making sure that we supply or we provide a part that we know that we can actually get at scale.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how many things it's like this actually is sometimes a problem with like Ryzen processors. Like, we would love to put like a Ryzen 7 and a Ryzen 9 in a bunch of stuff, but like, good luck getting one, or at least getting one at the scale that we need to get them at. So sometimes, especially with pre-builds, we make choices as best we can based on, generally with a pre-built system as an example, we want you to be able to order it and get it like shipped out the next day. And that means that we have to know that the parts are available. So generally speaking, it's really more about that and less about whether or not we think the part is good.
Okay. Yeah, I was just, because I was looking at it and I was like, I looked at it before and I was like, okay, the pre-built's got, Intel. It didn't even dawn on me that that's the only board you offered until tonight. And I was looking at it, just piecing my PC together, and I'm like, wait a second, I don't see what I'm looking for. But that's good to know. It's yet again, it's something that is, if you're going to offer it, you got to be able to provide it.
And I will say that something that's also worth noting, and this is part of like how we achieve the timelines that we do in terms of like getting stuff out to people quickly, is based on when you go on the website, you're going to see different products, because we're only going to show you products that we have in stock. So, because like, we don't want people having an experience where they get all excited, they build a system, and then we have to come back and say, oh, sorry, we sold you a piece, a component we don't have. So a lot of times, especially like with third-party components, obviously, like, we know a lot more about our own supply than others, but sometimes it's just a matter of what we can get a hold of. So to your point, like, we might actually have some of those in stock, and we might have them on the site when we have them. So as an example, like with custom ones, we want to make sure that you get the part that you picked, and that we're providing you parts that are compatible with each other. So we don't try to stock a lot of parts, because we also benchmark these, we test them. So we want to make sure that we have a small enough amount of parts that we can generally speaking guarantee the FPS. We can guarantee that they've been tested. We know that they will work well together. And then like with pre-builts, like I said, those are a little bit more like, you're generally paying more for the price point and the performance target. So we take a little bit more carte blanche with switching out parts that we have on hand. So generally speaking, what's on the website is correct. But like, it's so much of the industry comes down to supply, especially now when it's so in demand. So that's kind of the best I can tell you. We do the best we can.
Yeah, because I mean, I've looked at everything. I looked at the cases before and kind of, I'm not sure. And going back to Amazon, because trying to be very, very frugal with the what you buy, but even tonight I'm going back and I'm going back to the same cases, and it's like I do like some of these. Which one was that? I was looking at the. Oh man, I just had it here too. Oh, here it is. No, that's not the one. Sorry for slowing it down here. Where'd it go?
While you're looking that up, Nerdful, I just want to say I was looking at your site Nzxt as well while you guys were talking, and one thing that I think is really cool, and that most people probably don't even realize when they think of Nzxt, without some people probably don't even go to the site because they can't afford an Nzxt or something, but you guys offer payment plans through a third party as well that has 0% APR if people qualify, and I think that's really cool because I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Yeah, we do it through a firm, and we've definitely been looking into different ways to make it affordable. But as of right now, that's one where they handle a lot of the, a firm is pretty common kind of supplier in terms of someone that can help with finance and stuff like that, and they have all the systems built in. So we're always looking for stuff to make it more affordable. Like I would say that our price points, to your point, like they're not intended to be, you're not going to have to call it Apple. They're not trying to be expensive for the sake of it. We try to price them in a point where we're providing you very high quality. We hope, we're targeting things that'll last a long time. We use a lot of like, tempered glass and steel and stuff. So they're not going to be the cheapest thing in the world, but they're meant to be very high quality. They will last a longer time. So we're always trying to make it more accessible, but it doesn't necessarily mean, making it the cheapest it can be. So we try to strike a balance. And oftentimes we'll try to introduce things like, for instance, the Kraken M series is meant to be a more accessible price point for the Kraken line that we have. So we do try to sometimes offer things. Same thing with the starter PC. We try to see if we can hit the quality bar that we want to hit, but also offer it at a more affordable price point. But ultimately, we're not trying to be cheap. We're trying to be good. You can always have both.
Well, when I was looking at this too, one thing that I find amazing, and I can only talk about my experience, right? Because the most recent PC I got was from Dell, and ironically, my 1060 through Dell is priced the same as your starter PC that comes with a significantly better graphics card, and your your parts aren't as proprietary like Dell is, where they intentionally leave software out so I can't upgrade my chip, which really upsets me. But I think this is fantastic. That I'm looking at this now and I'm like, wow, I wish I would have known about Nzxt when I got my Dell PC, because I would have had an Nzxt nice looking case. I would have had something that I could upgrade later on, and starting out with the better graphics card as well. Same price too. This is crazy. I did not know about Nzxt when I got my Dell.
Yes, I'm actually loving the H710i. That's the one I'm loving. Black and red.
You got a lot of beefy stuff to put in there. It's a decent sized case. So.
I'm gonna build a desk around it.
Cool. I have on my desk. I have an H510 Elite just because I like the full size glass panel. Like I'm all about the more about the bling than I am about the performance. But I'm a big fan of our case designs, though. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember, I'm also the one that's pushing the 4 foot tall 1990s tower on wheels.
Keep that; it'll be worth some money someday.
If it doesn't dry rot, yeah, sure.
Rust-Oleum will be good.
That was my sleeper case. My wife looks at me, she's like, "What are you going to do with that?" I'm like, I'm going to build everything inside there, and then ta-da! Here's my PC, and everybody's going to laugh at it, and ha ha ha, it's a sleeper. And she's like, no, get one of those glass cases.
Well, also while I'm looking at your cases, actually, there's quite a few in here that I think are really cool. I like the look of the H1 case, how it builds up. I think that's really awesome. I like the fact that I think it's really cool that you have a Ninja branded case as well. I think that's really fantastic. And then the H7 case, which is a lot better than the case I just bought, and it's on sale as well on your website. It's just crazy. People, you need to know about Nzxt. You need to check it out. It's a really cool site, really cool parts, really cool people. You could tell that the company really wants clean, quality products out there. Something that people could be proud of.
I can also tell y'all, even though we don't really put it anywhere, the H series cases, the H actually originally meant hush because we wanted it it's such a toned down, restrained design. Like I said, that's something that I think kind of speaks to the general aesthetic that we always have, which is very restrained. We talk a lot about blank canvas. We really want our cases to kind of be, that's one of the reasons why I think originally, back when it wasn't cool to do, we had come up with white cases as, very clean lines, very open to kind of what you want to do with it. They can really scale to whatever you want to customize. But to me, like I kind of like, well, to me that kind of stuff is exactly the kind of design aesthetic that I like. Kind of drew me to the company. Actually, when I was considering joining, one of the things that convinced me to join the company was actually seeing a case in person. I mean, obviously, I think our photos are great and our models are great, but until you've seen it in person and see like the quality of the steel, like for me, it was we use a lot of other cases stealth logos where we were basically printing the logo in the same color that it's already on, and to me, like seeing like the steel with the Nzxt logo printed in like white on it, like you can barely see it. To me, I was like, oh yeah, that kind of was like the quality is very clear. And I'm not just like bragging about the quality. Like it's something where we spend a lot of time on the material, and I think that it's hard to capture it in a photo. Sometimes we try to like zoom in because we also use like a like kind of a dust coat on it to create that really nice like tempered feel to it. It really lasts long, and it's that kind of detail that even I didn't like really appreciate as much until I started working in Nzxt and was really starting to look at it, like how much time we spend on what the material is and how it feels and how it looks and how long it takes to develop hardware. Because you guys heard most of my career is not in hardware; it's in software and interactive and print and stuff like that. So even though I've PC built my whole life, this has still been a learning experience for me.
One thing I keep going back to on your website is the puck. So y'all planning on doing more like accessories like this? Because that thing's pretty cool, man. It's I think I need one.
I don't know. Like obviously we're always planning accessories, usually along with different things. But in terms of the puck, I don't have any like particular plans to share. Mostly what we do with the puck is we turn it into Pushy, which is our social media mascot. I have a plush of him right there.
Oh, really?
You can see it. Yeah, he's basically, or actually, we've been kind of talking about is it a he or is there multiple ones? So we've decided that, or at least my headcanon is that Pushy is actually a species of puck, and there are men, there are women, there are mothers, there are fathers, and whatnot. But like ultimately, that's puck is just like, and also if you look at our craft cases, we have a ton of fun because we always try to design different pucks because they're basically like headset holders or cable managers. So
yeah,
we always try to do really like fun, insane stuff. Usually like when you get a craft case, you're not just getting the case, you're getting like a charm and a puck to go along with it.
Right.
So we always try to have a lot of fun with that. I think we've discussed many times about just like selling pucks separately, but sometimes, especially the custom ones that we design, sometimes it isn't, we can't make it at a price point that we think is fair. Because like, so even though like we're not the cheapest in the world, we don't want to sell you a puck that's like, $100 or something. So we have to make sure that it makes sense to produce at scale and everything like that. So that's why we usually tend to attach them to the craft cases because those are, relatively expensive, but you're getting a limited edition with some very, very carefully crafted work. That's why it's called craft. But yeah, I'm a fan of the puck for sure. I actually I have one on my case, but I don't actually use it. I just think it looks nice by itself.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it kind of like it's intuitive, it's a intuitive design, which kind of leads to I think the design on the look of the cases also, where it's kind of sleek and clean, but it makes sense and it looks like it's made with good materials, right?
It's actually I don't know the entire story behind it, but it's actually inspired by a couple of our other cable management approaches. If you look at the backside of, I don't know if it's in both, but it's definitely in the H510. We actually have like a little puck that's right there, right around along where the cords are pulled back into the kind of the subway map style channels. And there's a little cable manager there that's like basically that. And so my understanding, if I'm repeating a portion of the story correctly, is that we were putting kind of those into cases for wrapping the cable and stuff. And then they eventually evolved it into a magnetic kind of plastic design for headphones and stuff like that. But that it's very much like we didn't just come out of it with nowhere. We actually built it off of our cable management designs.
Yeah, cool, man.
We actually got several questions in the chat that people are asking. So I'm going to go to Infinite first. He has kind of like two questions that go together. One is he asks what sets Nzxt apart from your competition, and two, who does Nzxt consider competitors?
What sets us apart from our competition? I mean, like I said, to be honest with you, I always go back to like what are our ultimate like design pillars and stuff. It's the focus on community, it's the focus on design and quality, and it's the focus on simple, seamless, kind of accessible design. So like ultimately, like it depends kind of what you want. I think a lot of what I would consider our competitors definitely have high quality products. You generally want to come to us if you want like a really kind of clean aesthetic. Our designs are very restrained. Like to the point you were making, we don't put a lot of extra shapes on there. We have a design DNA language that's very intentional. We use the word intentional around the office and in calls a lot. What you're looking at a design is like, it's very minimal, but it's very intentional. And you can't really get away with a minimal design if you're not very careful about the details. And so it actually takes us a lot of pushing back and restraint to not add additional complexity. And most of our design work is very functional. So like even our well-known kind of like circular mesh designs, one of the rule sets around using the mesh is that it's always got to be functional. We don't just put mesh on something to put a mesh on there. It always needs to be assisting things. So you're going to get very carefully considered design, but it's ultimately, it's got to be about whether or not it fits the aesthetic you're trying to go for. Obviously with our CAM software, we try to make it very accessible to customize the pieces, and we try to offer most things with like RGB. But to me, like it still kind of comes down to, I talk a lot about the Nzxt spice. Like whenever we're talking about something, we always talk about, hey, why is Nzxt doing this? Like, what, like, so we're not going to do everything under the stars, right? Like we're going to make intentional choices. I mentioned something that I really enjoy about our strategy is that we make very focused lines of products. We don't offer 40 cases. We offer the H series of cases. And basically, if you look at our case line, the H1 to the H7 is basically going up in size. I don't think it's this way anymore, but originally that number referred to the PCIe slots. And then the number behind it, the 1, is the generation of case. This is our second iteration, or the first generation of the new H series. So it's like, it's one of those things where, same thing with the Kraken. We don't offer a whole mess of AIOs. We offer the Kraken, and then there's a variety of different things. Same thing with our air fans. Like for us, it's about focus, and it's about a kind of like this marrying of aesthetics and performance. Like everything that we produce is not going to have like probably the best performance absolutely in the world. Like you're probably going to find better benchmarks, but if you want a combination of aesthetics and performance at the same time, and you want a lot of control and a lot of like that blank canvas effect where again, like very high focus on quality materials. Like I said before, we use a lot of tempered glass and steel. You're not going to get an Nzxt product that's using cheap plastic or anything like that. Like we're very thoughtful around the materials that we use and stuff. So at the end of the day, I always tell people that that's what you're getting with Nzxt is like the design focus, and then ultimately the focus on community and the combination of what we do that with CAM. Like we don't see ourselves as just hardware. We see it as community, software, services like Build. We're ultimately going to bring that to you. And then I'd say to the the other question was like, who do we see as our competitors? I mean, obviously, like companies like Razer and Corsair are generally considered competitors, but I would say like we don't really talk all that much about like how are we competing in this role as much. Like something that I think is very similar to Blizzard as what I like about Nzxt is that we're mostly kind of playing our own game, to be honest with you. Like obviously we're selling things that other people can buy from other companies, but and the reason I say that is like Blizzard, people were like, oh, what about, do you have like a rivalry with Riot? And it's like, no, we're all game developers here. We're all doing our own thing. And if people, we happen to create, competitive products. I mean, I can show you right now, I'm using a Razer mouse. Like, I'm a fan of it. I have a drop keyboard. So like, at the end of the day, like I said, gaming companies like Corsair, Alienware, Razer, sure. But like at the end of the day, we're going to produce something because we think it's going to be valuable for gamers and for our customers. We're not really chasing other people about what we think they do. Like I said, we're big fans of a lot of the other competitors in the industry. We use a lot of their products. We talk to them. It's actually something that I like about the game industry at large is that I think people perceive a lot of like rivalries, but in general, game developers are all friends. It's such a small industry. Everyone's doing their best to make great games, and if you look really closely at it, you won't see a lot of rivalries. Like we're all just trying to, there's enough room for everybody in the industry to produce great equipment. And the demand for PC gaming is high, and the biggest limitations are supply sometimes, and kind of finding what you want out of a PC. So, enough to go around.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that, and I agree with you. I think that, people perceive the marketing department, because marketing departments make those fancy commercials and come up with the slogans like, what was it? Nintendo does what Sega can or something. Correct me if I'm wrong on the
The
slogan.
Nintendo.
Nintendo don't.
Yeah, okay. And people receive that as like, oh, well, these developers must hate each other because one works for Microsoft, one works for Sony first party, and they don't realize at the end of the day, a lot of these developers from multiple different companies all hang out. They all like talk to each other. They might go from a Sony studio to a Microsoft studio to a Blizzard Activision studio. It's like they all talk. They're all friends. It's not like it, there's just too many. I think on Twitter these days, too many toxic warriors that don't even understand that developers are not marketers. They're all friends. It's
Oh
just a
yeah.
hard thing to explain to some people these days.
It's also, you got to remember, networking. That's part of, if you want to go to this other company and you're an asshat, and no one's going to want to hire you at the next company. You know what I mean? So it's part of the networking. It's you gotta, and that's what these guys don't remember. And it's great. I mean, am I wrong? You're on this side of me. Am I wrong with what I'm saying? Yeah, part of it is networking. Part of it is actually being a human being, and
Mhm.
building friendships. It's not just, oh, I'm going to use this guy to boost me. It's to build the friendship, which ends up boosting you.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, you see it, like even you mentioned Mike Ybarra before. Like he joined Blizzard a bit before I left. He was technically my boss's boss. Super nice guy. Everyone was really excited to have his experience, and uh, you know, like I said, it's relatively small industry. What like we have a bunch of people working for Nzxt that have worked for Corsair and Razer and Dell and Alienware. Like it's these are all this is a lot of specialized experience, and you have to really care about it. So there's not a giant like pool of people that have invested that much in the industry. So to your point, like most everybody I know has been at least like at one or two different game developers. They're usually at a number of different system integrators. It's just when you're and also when you're to go look for a job, like to your point, you got to be great. You got to be good to work with. You have to have you can't have an agenda because people are going to find out about it. Like they're going to call their friends. I still talk to most everybody I work with at Blizzard. So it's things come back around to you. So there's a lot of karma within the industry for sure.
We do have another question in the chat. Husk asked, do you have any plans to expand into other markets or other segments of the PC space?
I mean, without saying things I can't, I'll say yes, but I'll have to chillax a little bit on telling you exactly what we're going to expand to, but yes.
Husk, he's bringing LifeX instead of Hugh. I'm kidding.
Well, I know that we're past the 2-hour mark by a little bit, so if anybody on the panel has any like final questions for Shawn, because I don't want to keep him sitting in the chair too long and he gets uncomfortable and I feel bad. So
yeah, no, I just want to say thanks for coming on, man. It's awesome to have somebody that has so much different experience with all these different things that you've done in the gaming industry. So to hop on a show like this is pretty awesome to help us learn a little bit about you and the company that you're working for now.
Sure, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm going to double up on that too. It's great to learn the history behind people. Where they came from and how they've grown and to where they are at now. So thank you for letting us see that side of you that a lot of people don't get a chance to see and understand where you didn't just pop in there and get this job and there you go. It just happened. You worked for it and you earned it. So it's good to see that perseverance and adaptation get you to certain places. So thank you for your time. Hopefully maybe one day we'll do some Breaking Bread with Dread. So, well, we'll explain what that means.
One real quick question before we end the interview is that Infinite asks, what segment does Nzxt market to, or whom are their key demographic when marketing products?
I mean, it's not a specific. I wouldn't say it's a specific segment, but the real answer for us is we want to be accessible to anyone that considers themselves a gamer, especially a PC gamer. I would say that if you look at our general products, that most of our customers kind of fall into two big demographics right now, which is either people that are PC building enthusiasts that know a ton about what they're doing and are interested in using, components and building out a system. And the other segment of people is that, people that want to take PC gaming seriously, but, maybe not as seriously as to go build their own system and do all the research. But like, to us, like ultimately in terms of like targeting and other things like like I said, it's it's about inclusion. Like people in the gaming community, very much like, hey, if you want PC gaming to be part of your life, you want to make an investment in gaming, like those are the people that we're ultimately targeting. And it obviously changes, per product what we're doing, but like ultimately that doesn't vacillate too much. I often say that I think that we exist at kind of the intersection of aesthetics and performance. If you want something that's highly performant and hits all of the perfect specs and has the best temps and airflow, like there's probably better cases that are not going to look that great but might do it well. If you look at like our products, like our motherboard, for instance, like our motherboard is entirely designed. It's a solid, Intel Z490 board, but it's got like a ton of RGB headers. It's got like an armor plate on it to make it nice and clean. Like ultimately, intersection of aesthetics and performance. So like that's what I always tell people is like our kind of demographic is, I wouldn't say it's quite like mainstream gamers, but it's definitely kind of in that point of like you're interested enough to invest in PCs as part of your desk or part of your life or whatever. But there's a variability as to how much. I've actually compared it weirdly enough to like scuba diving. So like anybody can go scuba diving. You can go rent gear. Maybe some people own like a snorkel or fins or something like that. And then other people, it's an entire part of their life. They own thousands of dollars of gear. They own their own wetsuit, their own tanks. They go on dives by themselves, or they go on vacation just to go dive. Like there's what makes you a scuba diver, all of those things do. It's the same thing in our mind, like with gaming and PC gaming is like, you could be, someone that just owns the snorkel or the fins. You could be someone that like literally, puts your own tanks together, maintenances them, has all of the gear. It's just kind of the level of that's why I go back to that idea of like why I love lifestyle brands is like, you're choosing to make it a part of your experience. You're investing your time in that hobby or that experience versus something else. And that's generally speaking where we're going out. We're ultimately trying to reach all of those people.
And then Infinite just wants to let you guys know that he just purchased a PC over 1K after taxes, but next year his daughter's going to want one, so he's going to Nzxt for his daughter's PC.
Cool. Glad to hear that. Well, we will welcome you then.
That Starter Pro looks good.
It does, yeah.
I'm sitting here and I'm like picking out the cases.
Yeah, we're all shopping now.
I'm literally shopping everything but motherboards because I can't get what I want. But everything else is like, holy cow,
I actually not that I do it a ton, but when I try to send gifts to friends of mine that are not that into it, but they want to get PC gaming, I've actually personally purchased like a number of Starter Pros and Starter Pluses for a lot of my friends, or family members or whatnot. And like I said, it's not going to give you the same experience as like a $4,000 PC, but I really like seriously believe that like everything we have on our website and like what we offer like is very carefully tuned to give you like a really great experience for the price point, along with like I keep saying the warranty like I'm making a sales call or something, but like I don't know if any like y'all were talking about like we're talking about building PCs, but like the the not funness of having like 9 different computer parts that are all from different manufacturers and different channels and stuff. And like, obviously we sell on Amazon and Best Buy and Micro Center, but ultimately when you're buying straight from us, like rolling all of that up into our warranty and then also offering like our customer service again. Something that I really love about both Blizzard and Hotel Tonight where I worked is like all of our customer service is in-house. We don't outsource it at all. Those are employees. They're
nice.
Treated like Nzxt employees. A lot of them are based in City of Industry. It seems like a small thing, but I've noticed that companies that actually treat customer service like a part of their company and like employees, they pass that love along to you. So I'm a huge fan of our customer service team as well. And I think those are all like, ultimately benefits that you kind of get under the hood with it. But I honestly think, especially for people that are getting into it, or if you're younger or something, like I think it's a really good hobby. It's like it's very like it's very what's the word I'm kind of thinking? Like I said, to me it like kind of sparks joy, like just looking at what you've created. Like there's a lot of achievement in it, and then also once you've been like, oh, I built this, then you can go play a video game as well, and you have a lot of control and tuning. It's just, I don't know, it's to me, like the gaming sphere has just got so much to offer. Like I'm actually really, really excited that it's like over the last few years really becoming less of a niche thing. Like obviously the gaming industry is bigger than the movie industry and stuff like that. But the point we're getting to where, I worked a lot on like esports stuff, and my parents and a lot of like friends that have kids, like they very much went from the whole like, oh, playing games rots your game, your mind, and you shouldn't do that, and it's not safe, it's a niche thing to do, you don't be a nerd, to like now it's like everybody is a gamer. It's really, really cool to be a gamer. It's a massive industry. There's so much stuff to get into. You can play it on all sorts of different things. There's so many different levels of experience you can have. Like it's super enriching for kids, and it's like a really great there's basically like not a lot of negatives as long as you kind of stay away from people that try to be high and mighty about it. But I really think that overall there's far more people that just want you to have a great time in gaming than there are that want to be toxic.
Yeah, I think the toxic people don't even really play games. I think they just spend most of their time trying to cause an argument than actually playing a game. And I think this should be the last question, because Infinite can't stop looking at your website. But he has one final question, I think. He says, do you guys have more first-time customers, or is the bulk of your sales from repeat customers?
Off the top of my head, I would say that we have a lot of new customers. Just to be very honest with you, not that we don't have a lot of repeat customers. I mean, like, to give an example, the only way you can get this plush other than working for us is by joining our Discord and chatting. Like, you can't buy it. You have to engage with our community and help people out and whatever. So we do have a lot of return customers, a lot of fans, but like ultimately PC like components are investments, so you don't replace them that often. So if I look at kind of our growth over the last few years, it's definitely more people becoming aware of our brand and purchasing from us. And we did, like I said, don't get me wrong, we definitely have a ton of repeat customers. We're actually working on a number of programs that we're eventually going to roll out to kind of help with what we tend to refer to as Nzxt super fans. We have tons of people that are just big fans of us and will buy stuff from us, but we don't like to rest on our laurels. We don't want them to just keep buying from us because they like something we've already done. They want to know that we're continuing to design stuff and deliver stuff in the same way that we've always done. So like, yeah, a little bit of both, but I would say that definitely a shocking amount of, especially during the pandemic, tons of new gamers. Like that Micro Center story is very well reflected on the stats of our websites and what we're seeing in terms of demands coming out of all these different manufacturers. Like so many gamers are coming online right now, people that weren't into it before.
Midway, any final questions or anything at all?
So I guess I had to step away for a few minutes. Forgive me if it was asked, but you said that you're competitive with Razer. Now Razer is getting into a lot of accessories and definitely with mobile handsets and stuff. Did you guys ever plan, or have you planned on like having like a mobile handset or a phone to get into the mobile gaming space?
I would say that is not something that we're immediately focused on. Not ruling it out. If we think it's going to serve PC gamers, we'll look into it. I think if you look at like Razer as a competitor, like very honestly, like their sweet spot's probably more in like things like mice and keyboards and stuff like that, and ours is more in like cases and coolers. But they tend to have a much wider spread than we do. Like I said, we tend to be very much more careful about what we're going to work on. I think they get excited and they're trying a lot of different things. So like I said, I wouldn't rule it out, but I wouldn't say that we're focused on it either. We have a lot of places that we can add value to PC gaming before we get to mobile.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna let the panel do outros, and then Shawn, you can do the last outro so it's memorable for sure. But
Cool.
Midway, where can people find you?
Midway Monster on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed this this interview. I mean, for someone that's mainly a console gamer, and talking about PCs definitely still new territory to me. So it was a good learning experience. Thank you very much. Great show. Glad to see the Pope was in the chat, backing up his Nzxt guy there. Glad to see Dreadpool tag team on this one. You could tell he was excited about talking about PC, especially with his relic he's got in his room. So thank you very much. Have a good night.
And Dreadpool, where can people find you? Dreadpool, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Daughter came by, so I had to mute. So anyway, my bad. Thank you for Shawn for hanging out with us for the past couple hours. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You can find me on Twitter at Dreadpool, the O's are zeros, YouTube, Gamertag, and Stadia is Dreadpool, all letters, all caps. Breaking Bread with Dread. This is where I sit down with other personalities and we go to a table at a restaurant. We eat food and we discuss whatever the topics are, hobbies or interests, anything like that. So Shawn, if you're ever in this area or if I'm over in that area, I'd like to meet up and expand more of the topic, especially when it comes to tech talk. I'd like to see more of like the past and where you're at now and hopefully in the future. But we'll see what happens, right? Gaming Beyond the Box every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Breakfast with Boom, Friday mornings at 10 a.m. Four Guys Recorders interviews like right now, what we're doing. And also just an FYI, Gaming Beyond the Box has a Thankmas with Gaming Beyond the Box. It's on Tiltify, TILTIFY.com at GBTV. Okay, so that's if you guys would please donate to that. I forgot what Husk said it was going to. I think it was supposed provide hope and support to families in need during these hard times. So it's our Thankmas. And as always, because these are the holidays, anybody feeling down or anything, my DMs are always open. May not know what to say, but at least I'll be an ear for you to listen to.
Awesome,
Dreadpool. And Mav, man, where can people find you?
Hey, tonight on Xbox Ultimate Podcast starts in half an hour over on my YouTube channel, Fun Speculation. Also, you can check me out on Twitter at Fun Speculation. I'm here with you guys on Tuesdays, as always, and also on Saturdays or Thursdays. There's going to be a new podcast starting from God's Geeks YouTube, and it's going to be the Extraordinary Podcast. I'll be co-hosting that with him. It was planned for tomorrow, but he had to cancel that one due to family stuff. But we'll be seeing that pick up probably after the holidays. Also on Friday during the day, Next Gen Squad podcast over at Mads Gaming. So yeah, it's a great interview again. I appreciate you hanging out with us, Shawn.
Well, can I add one more thing? Sorry, clowns. I almost forgot. Tonight is going to be one of the probably first and only times we do a live show for FWNR. It's going to be tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Shawn, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been fantastic talking to you, learning about Nzxt, about your history in the industry. A lot of fascinating stuff, actually, about Blizzard and your passion for it and your humble beginnings over at Game Battles and SOCOM. That is really cool. I just want to tell you, because I remember those days, actually. So it kind of hits me in the heart there. And Shawn, where can people find you?
Cool. So, kind of, I'll give two sets of things to check me out. So, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is Daborsk, Daborsk. So personally, like I do a fair amount of writing about the craft of games and stuff. So I also do a podcast about games called the Art Eater Podcast. It's part of a magazine that my business partner from Atlanta started after I think in college, and then we kind of kept doing it, and then we eventually evolved it into a podcast. So we talk about like old games and like the craft of making games, because me and him worked in the industry, and a lot of the games I talked about, his brother's a game design professor. We bring on a bunch of people, so we actually just talked about like X-Men Children of the Atom, and then before that we had like a 9-part series on the Guilty Gear series and stuff. So you can find my stuff at Art-Eater, and then on Nzxt, obviously, nzxt.com. And if you're looking to get pre-built or custom build PCs, our service is Let's Build, or at letsbld.com. And I highly recommend our Twitter at Nzxt, and I highly recommend also the Nzxt podcast. They mostly talk to guests, and they go through a number of the employees at Nzxt and ask them about their life in gaming. So if you want to get like if you really like the insight into the people that work in Nzxt, the podcast I think just did their 70th episode. So it's pretty fun. And of course, join our Discord over at Nzxt, the Nzxt Club. And if you talk to people and help them enough, you can get swag like t-shirts and the Pushy plush. And you don't have to own Nzxt hardware. Just you got to love games and got to be nice and friendly to people. So thank you all for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Well, that's really awesome to hear that you also do a retro gaming podcast kind of. I remember X-Men showing around, and man, so I'm gonna go back and start listening to your stuff as well. And Dreadpool.
Ours are also like 3.5 hours long because we have no restraint whatsoever. So
that's the best.
Pope knows I can go on for hours.
Dreadpool can. I think Dreadpool's longest podcast was 5 hours.
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, a little bit more.
It sounds like I think impressive to people, but now that I kind of just started getting into the world of podcasting, and I'm not really like good at it, it's amazing how fast those hours go by when you're talking about cool stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think people realize that if you have like an hour-long podcast or a 30-minute long, how much restraint it takes and how much discipline to not talk for that long. So it's cool.
Oh, believe me, I mean, I'm sure like this panel could keep you on for hours talking about video games because we just love them. But everybody's got things to do and stuff comes up like that. So we understand and we appreciate your time, definitely. And for all the people listening, you can check us out at 4Guys with Quarters on almost every platform, YouTube, Twitter, 4GWQ Podcast. We're on all the podcast feeds that you could think of. You could find me on multiple podcasts: 4Guys with Quarters, 4GQ TV News, Game Beyond the Box on Wednesdays, Primetime Gaming with Mr. Boomstick and Friends, and Mad's Gaming Podcast on Monday. And I'm supposed to be a guest when Extraordinary Podcast launches after the first of the year, once everything's settled. So I'm excited for that. And, once again, Shawn, hats off to you for your passion. It's really appreciated when passionate guys like you enter this industry and, get in there and make a mark on whatever that you do because you put your passion into that. And that definitely shows. I mean, everything that you've talked about, it sounds like passion projects, especially that Greg Hastings cover. That was awesome. You're like, I could do this. So thank you so much, man, for coming on and talking with us. And I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream now. So everybody who's listening, You can find us on Tuesdays, normally 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. And then when we do interviews like this, and hopefully we can get some more guys on from Nzxt, give you different insights and maybe different parts of Nzxt, which would be really cool. But thank you everybody for coming by, listening, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Deuces.